Friends, fans, and fine folk, grab your drinks and snacks, and come on down around the campfire for this short rest. With me and my friend Potaytosaurus!
I forgot my popcorn, I just realized.
You should have your popcorn around the campfire, damn it. Alright, welcome in everybody for definitely take one of that perfect take as always. I'm joined around the well, maybe not around the campfire. We usually start with a setting up what the setting is that we're in. So you, Potaytosaurus, are brand spanking new to the game of D&D. How long ago did you hear about the game of D&D?
I kind of knew that D&D was a thing. I mean, how do you not know that D&D is a thing?
I know, right?
I never
It's in
really
the
knew
zeitgeist.
what that consisted of. I think I was on a bike ride with a friend like a month ago, and we were just chatting, kind of catching up during the ride, and he said that he had a campaign, a D&D campaign that he was part of that just started. And I'm like, oh, what does that entail? You know, what do you do? I've always kind of been interested in what it is. And he told me a little bit about it, and as we were talking about it, you know, it seemed really cool, really, really interesting. And the next day I went on stream and I was like, hey chat, so this is what I did yesterday. What do you guys think about D&D? And they're like, we love it. Are you gonna do it?
Like
and I was like, maybe. This is a lot. So everybody was super pumped about it. And I decided, you know, it'd be a cool thing to learn about. And I really just started on Monday. Like, brand spanking new.
Yep. So
About
we are recording this on a Saturday, so Monday to Saturday. We're less than a week into like properly delving into the game, which is new for my guests. Normally I'm interviewing or chatting with members of the community that are established for doing their own thing. They've got podcasts or they've got Twitch programs or whatever. But you are a Twitch streamer. You've got a following through doing variety streaming, gaming and such, and now you're looking into potentially doing D&D if you enjoy it. No obligation to stick around. You're going to love it. You're going to stick around for sure.
That's what I keep being told, yeah.
So what you won't know is what a short rest is, probably. How much do you don't know the terms, short rest? So a short rest, in the game of Dungeons & Dragons, you've got hit points, you're attacking goblins and you're getting hurt and everything, you're going on adventures and quests and you're getting this and that and you're using your spells up and you're needing, I'm exhausted, I need a rest. And you can rest in two ways. You can rest with a short rest or a long rest. A long rest is what we think of as overnight sleeping, like you sleep for 8 hours, you wake up, all of your spells and everything back. Please go.
What if you're an elf and you don't sleep? You meditate.
Very good. That is still
I'm
a long
an elf.
rest. You
That's
still
my
need
first
to have
character.
you still need to have your long rest, but for a long rest for an elf just doesn't consist of sleeping. It consists of a trance instead. So you go into a 4-hour trance, and that gives you the benefits of sleeping. In D&D, most games, sleeping is kind of magical in a way, in that it just recovers all of your hit points and damage overnight, and there's jokes and like memes and parody skit series and things that are poking fun at the fact that you can go to sleep with a broken leg and wake up fine. So it's a lot of the memes are like one of the most fantastical elements of Dungeons and Dragons in a game of Dungeons and Dragons is the fact that that you can just go to sleep for 8 hours. you can just have a perfect night's sleep every night and
so
wake up feeling fine.
Full and as well?
You do, yes.
I know
That's
food is a thing, right?
The default position is that you wake up full after a long rest. It's a complete reset on all but your hit dice. We won't go into that just yet. But everything but your hit dice is a complete reset on a long rest. There are gritty versions of the game, like optional rules and things that some people play with, that's like you don't recover quite as much as a long rest. They're going for a little bit more realism in their games maybe, so that like deep wounds don't just magically heal overnight and that sort of stuff. But before we get too far off track, that's a long rest. A short rest is you can recover little bits of hit points and maybe one or two of your spells, not a whole thing, but it only takes an hour. So you sit down, you bandage your wounds, you have a rest, you eat some bread, whatever you do. You take 1 hour to just sit down and have a rest, and then you recover a little bit, and then you keep on with the dungeon. Because sometimes you're in the middle of a big quest to clear out an entire castle full of goblins, and you're halfway through and you're like, I'm getting a bit injured here, I need to have a breather. And so that's what a short rest is for.
Does everyone short rest at the same time?
Yes, usually you have your whole party to just be like, hey, everybody just let's barricade the door. Let's sit down for an hour and have a rest, and then once we're done, we continue with our adventure.
Okay, and then how long does a short rest or a long rest last in real time? I guess
in real time you can just skip over it. You can, like, the dungeon master can just be like, all right, you guys are having a short rest. All right, mark off your hit points and stuff that you're leveling up, and then we'll continue. So you can
so
you don't have to act
can you
out.
Pencil something in. Okay.
Exactly. You don't have to act out everything in the real time of the game. A lot of really roleplay heavy groups, like ones that really enjoy getting into the nitty gritty of how their characters are interacting with each other, will act out a short rest in real time, or even slower than real time. Some of my games have been like 3 hours long for a session. And we've gotten to the end, and it's been like, that was just around a campfire, and you were just talking for 3 hours, and it was passing at less than real time because you were just talking so much about like things out of character, and like kept jumping back in and retconning stuff and talking about like inventory management and things. And so yeah, it's really down to the group. Sometimes you can just hand wave it, and sometimes you hand wave entire days. You're like, oh yeah, you've been traveling for 4 days now. And you're assuming, obviously, at the end of each night, you're setting up a camp and you're having a long rest, and then you're putting it away and you're carrying on. So it's really down to the pacing of the game as to how quickly your short rest is in real time. But in the game, it is at least an hour. In my games, it's half an hour because I hand wave that.
Okay, so I guess it depends on the campaign and the people in it, but I would assume that there's a sort of, it depends on those people whether or not there's a lot of acting, whether there's mostly just rolling dice and attacking and scenarios.
Yeah, very, very much so. They're kind of differentiated, I suppose, as like roleplay heavy versus like mechanics heavy or something, like gameplay heavy. It is a role-playing game, so there is an element of roleplay to it, but roleplay doesn't have to be acting in character and saying things in first person. I'm going to swing my sword at that guy. You can be role-playing by doing third person. You can say, my character Polonius draws out his sword and he says in an angry voice something intimidating to the goblin, and then he charges at him and strikes him. And that is roleplay because you've considered like how that character is acting and what they're saying. But you don't necessarily, you're kind of leaning into, hey, I'm not intimidating in person. I don't actually know what would be an intimidating thing to say. So I just kind of narrate that he says something intimidating and then charges forwards. And and it's really down to the table and the comfort level of everybody at the table as to how much that is involved. And so some games that I run for are verging so much on the role play that they're essentially verging into LARP territory. Have you heard of LARPing before?
LARP.
LARP,
right?
Yeah. LARP.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. The accent. Yes,
in
I've
my
heard
accent,
of it.
yeah. LARP.
Yeah.
LARP. I should roll my R's to give you an American accent.
Yes. LARP.
Yeah, so LARPing is live action role playing,
Yeah.
dressing up and whatever. And some of my D&D games kind of verge on that because at the table in a combat, they're all kind of getting up and they're going, "Oh, I'm gonna shoot him with an arrow, and then I'm gonna hide behind the desk, and then I'm gonna jump up and I say this to him," and I'm like, "Okay, you're really getting into it, I see."
That's great though. So do you find normally with new people, and I know it all depends on the person and the group, but new people getting into it, do you find that it takes them a little bit to kind of find their character and get into that role play?
Depends on their background. I play with a lot of people who have background in theatre or acting or like anything like that gives them a little more confidence in taking on a character. Public speakers, anyone who's done kind of things that train you a little bit in not really caring so much what people think.
I'm mostly like a hide in the corner kind of person. You do your thing, I'll be over here.
Yeah, some people do that, and some people never come out of that because that's not a phase they're going through. That's just genuinely how they enjoy the game. Some people, it's hard. It took me a while, like when I was first starting out, to recognize that one of my players at the time genuinely enjoyed the game because I kept going like, I don't think he's not really getting involved in like the role play, and he's not really driving things forward. But every time he'd turn up every week and he'd roll his dice and he'd have fun and he'd leave. And I had to learn from experience, like, this is him enjoying the game. This is how he likes to take the game in. He likes to be a passenger for the ride along with the rest of the things. He's not the one in the group that's making the decisions. He's like going along with whatever the story is that day. It's maybe his way of unwinding after a long day of work. And he doesn't have to make lots of decisions in character and stuff. He's just like along to slay some goblins and leave. And he didn't fully get into the roleplay a lot, but that's perfectly fine. That's a different way of playing the game.
A little something for everybody.
Yeah, a little something for everybody. So now that you understand what a short rest is, this is why I named this thing a short rest, because it's a couple hours to just sit down and chat as if we're around a campfire having a short rest during an adventure. So I put it to you that we are on an adventure of sorts right now, and we are having a short rest. So what sort of an adventure are we on? Are we on like a quest to go, and you can think about it in terms of like video gaming? Like, have we been given a fetch quest or an escort mission? Are we an assassination mission?
I'm a very food-oriented person, so I imagine this would start with like going to look for food and then stumbling upon some creature.
Nice.
And oh crap! Now we're in this situation. What do we do?
Okay, cool. I love it. So we've gone to look for some like ingredients to make like a really nice buffet meal. For maybe some noble is coming to town, and we've been in charge of like, hey, go and forage for some whatever. And we're out in the forest, and maybe there's like a cave that we came across, and we saw some fungus growing in the cave that indicates that there's some particularly rare ingredient that grows further in the cave. We're like, oh, this is the so-and-so. Our druid or someone who is a ranger, some sort of naturist, who was like listening to the ground and tasting the fungus, and was like, this is a so-and-so fungus, and it only grows around the presence of this other thing. Oh, we should go into the cave and get it. And we went further into the cave, and one thing led to another, and we kept going deeper and deeper, and then something happened behind us, and we're like, all right, we're on a cave mission now, I guess. So we're out in the wilderness, we're in a cave, we're having a short rest. Have we managed to barricade ourselves into sort of a natural crevice against the monsters of the cave, or are we...
No, I don't think so. I think we were standing our ground because we really only just heard noises, right?
Yeah, it's just creepy noises and things, groans coming from even deeper into the cave, into the deep, dark depths.
We've heard creepy noises, we're assessing the situation, we're kind of thinking, you know, if we're the biggest thing in here, maybe that thing won't find us for dinner, and maybe they'll be intimidated versus us being intimidated.
So we're trying to be loud on our short rest. We're making loud noise. We're going to be like, we own this cave. We belong here. So that means we're
loaded with food. So they're going to get not only dinner, but, you know, dessert with it. So we can't give all of that up for free. So we gotta try and intimidate them into not bothering us. So we've probably got a campfire of sorts with us. Yeah. We started a fire. Lots of light. Lots of...
Yeah, Wizard has cast dancing lights. We've got like fairy lights around us.
It's a party in this cave.
There's a bard. There's a bard with us that's singing a song of rest with us as well, singing some songs. We're having a good old party in this cave. What are we drinking? What have we been foraging for drink? Are we just going water skins, or have you got wine or something with you?
Well, I kind of imagine the cave to... I don't know if it's stalactites or stalagmites, the ones that are kind of at the top and they drip down.
Stalactites have to hold on tight because they're on the ceiling.
Okay, well, we've got stalactites around us, and we're kind of, you know, it looks a little weird, you know, whatever the liquid is that's coming off of it.
Something's dripping. It's like an amber liquid coming from this.
Yeah, we're so deep in this cave, we figure, you know, we found all this good food. That's probably got some sort of a quality in it, too. I think I want to try it. So we're doing a little bit of experimenting, figuring out what it is.
The druid in the group is the ones that can like shapeshift into animals, and they pull a prank on the rest of us. They go and taste it, and they're like, "I'll just take," and then they cast wild shape on themselves, and they turn themselves into a frog, and we're like, "What? Oh my god, what did we?" And then they turn themselves back, and they're like, "Yeah, we're just joking."
Tastes fine.
It tastes fine. Love it. And what are we eating? What have we managed to forage so far on this short rest that we're going to tuck into?
I think you said something about moss. I know
moss, fungus, growth.
The first thing I think about is when I was a kid, there's these candies that were in the shape of rocks, but they were chocolate. So maybe that
sounds like a dangerous thing to give to a kid. Let's teach these kids to put rocks in their mouth.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
so
and
maybe...
then there was they came in like a pack with some lollipops in the shape of syringes, and there were these sugar sweets in the shape of pills that we used to give kids as well.
I don't know that. Are you serious?
No,
Okay, I didn't. I'm
I'm
bad
taking
with
the
sarcasm. I really,
I'm taking the
bad
mix,
with
saying that like how bad it would be to teach
They
these
really were rough
kids
ones,
about
though.
what they should
were
eat.
brightly colored. They were very brightly colored. So I mean, if you're in a cave, what really is there? There's moss, because it's wet.
Yeah, of course.
There's
There were candy
rock,
cigarettes.
there's
Yeah,
some
you're
sort
right,
of
Mandari. There were
dirt.
candy cigarettes.
I don't know. That's a tough
Just
one.
surviving on that stuff. Maybe the Ranger's got some sort of magic to cast on like create food and water. Has turned like gotten mud pies together and then just turned it, and it's actually turned into an actual pie. Mushrooms,
Yeah,
there's
that
mushrooms
could
to
work.
be eaten. We've probably slayed
and
something on
mushrooms,
our
yeah.
way in as well. Maybe like a cave creature of sorts. Maybe there's some kind of
leafy
serpent.
greens, maybe. Some wild strawberries or something.
Yum. Sounds like a good short rest. So we've set up our short rest. Good. We're only 20 minutes in, and we've set up a short rest. It took 20 minutes for us to get this campfire going. First thing I like to talk about with my guests is the name. Where did Potaytosaurus come from, and why the Y in the middle of it?
Well, my name is Taylor, so there
you go. Taylor.
That's where the Tay comes from, and I knew I wanted my name to be Potato something. My fiance jokes all the time, I eat so many potatoes, I'm like a walking ball of starch. Like, I'm literally made of potatoes. I eat so many of them. And so I made a list of names, had like Mrs. Potato Head and Potatosaurus Rex. I had carb loaded in there, but I'm not really like an FPS person. And I looked on the wall, and there's this, I have this thing. It was a gift to me, but it's like well, I'll just show you.
Please. Potatoes. Oh my god.
I have the head of a.
Oh my god.
This is Mollytops. So this is where the Saurus comes from.
Mollytops cocktail.
Yeah, so she's kind of dusty, but yeah, this is Mollytops.
That's awesome. Why do you have a Triceratops head?
Yeah, it was a gift. I had a friend who was moving across the country, and they were like, I can't really take this with me. You seem like you might like it. I'm like, okay, I'll take it.
That's amazing.
But I had a list of names and sent them to my friends and told them to pick their favorite, and Potatosaurus.
Potatosaurus
was the winner. Yeah.
Was it originally Potatosaurus Rex, and then you dropped the Rex just for clarity, or were your friends like? No.
I never had Rex. It was an option, but it did not win. Actually, my fiance is Rex de Pote, so like Spanish, the Rex of the Pote.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Mm-hmm. And this was 2 years ago when you started streaming?
Yeah, about
coming
October
up with names
2020. Yeah.
And what made you get into streaming? Why did you decide to stream in the first place?
Well, I was graced with an opportunity.
As we all were
my
about
last
2 years
job.
ago.
I was let go from my last job for being unhappy, and it kind of put me in a state of, that sucks. I really liked that job. I was happy. What do I do now? So when you get let go for something like that, you have to take a good, hard, long look at what you want to do next and make sure that you're truly happy doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just spent a lot of time trying to climb out of the depression hole, and about a year passed, and I look back at that time and tried to figure out what I spent most of my time doing, and it was gaming. It's kind of my place to escape and not have to think about my current, what was happening. And so I said, why not monetize it? Why not just try it? And it did all start with, just trying to make it something, and it's grown into, I never would have imagined being here, and it's something I'm really proud of and excited about. And yeah, it's like a 180 of what it was when it started. Now it's all about potatoes still, but also positivity, potatoes and positivity, and spreading kindness and good vibes, all that good stuff.
Well, potatoes is how I came to find your channel, because a good friend of mine, GM Workshop, who is another content creator for D&D related things, he uses potatoes in his channel as an emote for when you roll a nat 1. Have you heard of what rolling a nat 1 would mean?
Well, I know what a nat 20 is naturally rolling a 20.
Okay.
So I'm assuming nat 1 is the same, but for a 1?
Correct. On the d20, the 20-sided dice that you use for the game, if you roll, you usually roll and add a modifier, which is why it's considered a nat 1 or nat whatever, because you're saying it's a 1 before modifiers. So a nat 1 is when it's naturally a 1 on the dice, right before you add any modifiers or anything to the roll. So nat 1s are usually the worst thing for the game, obviously, because because it's the worst number on the dice. It's the worst thing you can roll. If you're attacking, it's an instant miss. Some DMs rule it that it not only is an instant miss, but maybe you drop your sword, or maybe you fall over, or maybe you hit your friend, or something like that. So some rolls have that. So nat 1s are pretty bad in the game. And as such, in GM Workshop's channel, whenever somebody rolls a nat 1, people put the potatoes modifier. He says he refers to them as rolling potatoes. And so he's
like potatoes are a bad thing.
You don't want to roll potatoes are a fine thing, but you don't want to roll one when you're trying to hit a goblin with a sword. You don't want to hit him with a potato instead. They're a good thing in terms of
strong arm. You can take him out.
Potato gun.
Yeah, there you go.
So he uses those anyway, and he refers to potatoes often. And then I think he found your channel through the searching of potatoes or something, and then he was the one who suggested you to me in the end of a stream that we were in, and he said, if you're looking for someone to raid, Potatosaurus is just getting into the D&D game.
I think that was either day 1 or day 2, so either Monday or Tuesday of the whole even newer than I am now.
Now you're an old hand at it.
Oh, yeah. I've got 3 sets of dice now.
Yeah.
I know everything.
Easy. 3 sets. Man, you are well on your way to being a dice goblin. They are, they will keep coming thick and fast as well. I have, I don't know how many sets. I haven't counted them in a long time, but probably around 30 sets or so of dice.
Wow.
And that's considered not very many for someone who's been doing it as long as I have.
How long have you been playing D&D as long as you've been streaming?
No, I've been playing D&D longer. I've been playing D&D for 6 and a bit years now. 6.5 years or so, and I have been streaming for about 2.5.
Okay, so what is that? 5
exactly,
sets
Mindari.
per
30 sets. Rocky numbers. Gonna pump those numbers up. Well, you see, there's a lot of memes around people getting into D&D and suddenly losing all of their money to dice. I have never been one of those people. I don't have a dice addiction in the way that a lot of people do. The reason I have that many dice is because I keep getting sent them by fans and things, and I'm grateful for it. They are amazing. I love looking at them and stuff. But I don't look at one and go, oh, I better search for more online. I better find more dice. I better find these and this. Minis, however, miniatures, I will take till the cows come home. I've got thousands of minis behind me. I've got dragons. I've got dragons and giants and goblins and humanoids and monsters and plant material and bug men and all sorts of
I'm gonna need a bigger shelf.
Oh yeah.
Oh, man.
So minis are my dice goblin. Mindari cries in too much money spent on dice. Yeah, not alone, that's for sure. So, tell me about your experience so far. You've been into it for a whole 6 days. What have you been doing in those 6 days? You've been creating a character?
Incredible.
Creating a
yes,
hero forge?
I did character creation. I want to firstly talk about the community, because someone coming from... I'm a full-time streamer. I'm a full-time streamer now. That's all I do. And I am coming from a pretty big Souls background. So Dark Souls, Elden Ring. And I don't know if you know anything about it. I know you know a bit about
scrub.
it. But yeah, get good. That's kind of what I was dealing with for the past 7 or 8 months. Get good all the time. Everyone thinking that they're better than you.
Yep.
And the D&D community is the exact opposite.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you came into my stream, you raided into my stream one day, and you stayed for how long answering my new questions? That's insane to me.
It's part of the addiction. It's part of the addiction of the game. I love D&D, and I love talking about it, and seeing somebody as new as you are, and especially as you were, some of the things you were saying was so unbelievably new. It was refreshing because my entire life is around D&D. It's what I do for a living and for a hobby. So I live and breathe and eat and sleep and drink D&D. And so to go into somebody's stream who's just getting into it and has an interest in the game, because obviously you can find people who don't know anything about D&D, but usually it's because they don't have any interest in D&D. To find somebody who has interest but also doesn't know anything about the game is such a refreshing and rare moment of your life, because a week from now you're going to know a lot more about D&D. A month from now you're going to know a lot more. So to catch you in that very moment when you were somebody, the cutest interaction was excuse me, in the chat somebody said you were saying like, how should I conduct myself or something. You were talking about how should a good player act. Somebody said, don't murder Hobo. And you said, who's Hobo? And I was like, oh my god, that's so precious.
How do I know who Hobo is to not murder them?
Yeah, because it's such a term that's like ubiquitous in D&D. A murder hobo is a noun for somebody who goes around kind of like a hobo on a tram and on a train, just like going from town to town, just murdering and killing shopkeepers because they didn't give you a good discount. So that guy looked at me funny, so I'll kill him. Or that guy, I want to start a bar fight just because I feel like it, so I'll kill him and take his money. And like people who don't worry about the consequences of their actions in the game are referred to as murder hobos. So somebody's telling you don't murder hobo. They were using murder hobo as a verb, and then you were like, who's Hobo? How do I? And I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. And then that was followed up.
NPC basically.
That was followed up by. Somebody said, oh, it's when an adventuring party kills indiscriminately. And you were like, why are we having a party or something? You said something about like, whose party is it? And I was like, oh, you don't know the word party? for a collective term for a group of adventurers. It was so good. So I was like, at that point,
a lot of things like that I just straight in my head.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
And at that point, and obviously coupled with the fact that you were charismatic and charming, and it was you were an entertaining and fun person to watch on the stream, I was like, I need to have a chat with you so that I can answer these things in person, so I don't have to just be typing and hoping that my message is getting across and stuff. I need to have a chat with you. And then I suddenly thought, I have an entire stream that is about chatting with people from the community, and having somebody who's new to the community on there would be really accessible, because then I can point to this video as anybody who comes in multiple times a stream. I get people coming in being like, I'm new to the game. How do I get involved? What does this mean? Here, have you got any tips and tricks and blah blah blah. I'm always going, I'll eventually put out like a tips and tricks video on YouTube, I'm sure, but now I can just point to this video and be like, hey, watch this.
Here's your resource.
Watch this 2-hour chat that I had with somebody who's brand new to the game. And
what'll I be then whenever they decide to watch? What will I be then?
You'll have given up D&D immediately, been like, I don't find, not interested.
God, I hope not. I was imagining myself as like the DM and like having everything, and oh man.
But yeah,
shelves behind me.
To get back to your original point was that it wasn't an issue for me to hang out in your stream and answer questions and stuff, because it is, as you say, very much part of their community. People enjoy getting other people into the game. People want more people to be playing so that they've got more options for people to play with. They've got more content creators making things about it. All the rest of it.
Yeah.
It's a very welcoming community.
Yeah.
So much so that I've made a career out of it. Like, 2 years ago, I was graduating with a maths degree at a university, like trying to do a real job. And at the same time, my Twitch started, and then I was like, these people are really lovely, and they seem to care about the work that I'm doing in D&D. Maybe I can do this thing as a career instead of this other thing. And I took a punt and decided, why not? And made it a career.
That's fantastic. Wow, that's fantastic. But, I mean, other than learning about the community itself, which is just still mind-boggling to me how nice everyone is, I've learned character creation. I've made my own little person in Hero Forge, which was really cool.
Yeah, it's exciting. Isn't it?
So I'm an elf ranger, and I made my own backstory and my history, and it's kind of cool.
Tell us about them. Who are they?
Oh dear. Well, I don't know a ton, and I think my backstory goes something like, something happened, but I don't know what. What happened to my family? Do I have family? I can't remember anything from the event that happened, but there's a sigil next to me, and I know it's connected to the event of what made me not remember anything. I've got to find those answers. So I made that on stream, and I had a bunch of people kind of telling me like, you can add in more later. You don't have to make it a book.
Sure.
And
Exactly.
so I have a few people that I'm gonna try to start a campaign with, and they're sending me their backstories, and it's like pages, and I'm like, crap, I really didn't do enough here. And
no, you
just
did
like
fine.
I forgot, and now we're going on adventures. But so I'll get to it more in the future. But really, all I know is I'm an elf, and I picture myself in the woods because I love being in the woods, and I like being one with the shadows, being by myself and foraging, and you know, trying not to be seen, because that's where my happy place is just kind of like being alone.
I will tell you that you made a mistake choosing Ranger. They suck, and they're the worst class in the game.
Well, challenge accepted.
I'm joking. I mainly said that to piss off Felagun, one of my mods, who loves Rangers and will defend them to the unsub. He's unsubbed immediately. No, you will get memes around that exact thing, that Rangers they have a reputation for being the worst class in the game. But really? I find in everything that I've done in the 6 years I've been playing, there's nothing wrong with Rangers. They are just as powerful as everybody else if you use them right. Often they're seen as underpowered because the DMs often will overlook the exploration side of the game and just like go straight to combat, and they're not quite as powerful in combat as some of the other classes like fighters and barbarians and things. If you are building the Ranger optimized for combat, they can hold their own against any enemy just as much as anything else can. I have no problem with. And if you're not, then don't worry about it. That's not the way to play. That's not the way you have to play.
So what does that mean? I'm gonna get murdered on
if you're not up to
session?
No, because there's always a limitation factor about, like, you're not playing a video game, right? There's no video game designers that have created what their first combat is going to be. That's the person creating your first combat is going to be the dungeon master, and the dungeon master is a living person who knows you and your character that you've made, and so they are going to they're going to create that combat encounter with the balance of who's actually going to be in the combat. So just as a sidebar, I run a game on my channels on a weekend that's an interactive game of D&D. So we've got a single character who's like a solo campaign essentially, but everybody in the chat collectively as a hive mind is controlling their actions and deciding what they do turn to turn. And that character is a ranger. The chat decided collectively that they were going to make a ranger, and that ranger almost single-handedly killed a dragon. So you know, the rangers, as I say, if you choose to like optimize yourself for combat, you can be very powerful at combat. If you choose not to optimize yourself for combat, but you want to focus on like being an all-round explorer and magic kind of user, nature magic and things, you can do that, and you are very good at it. It's just that I think the reputation for rangers being bad is that a couple of the early subclasses that were released were not great. The Beastmaster Ranger wasn't the greatest balance for the Ranger and things. They tried to fix it again in later editions and stuff, and it's a whole thing. But I think it's got unwarranted reputation around the Ranger. If you don't want to die in your first combat and you don't like the potential of doing that, then you just need to have a conversation with your DM in what in the community is known as a session zero, like a talk before the game starts. Like everybody should be talking to each other openly about the game, about what sort of game that you're interested in, what sort of difficulty level you want your encounters to be, what motivates your characters. Like, should I be using loot to try and motivate you and say like, oh, there's a dragon loot that you can go and, because some people will be like, I'm not interested in loot and wealth, I'm interested in helping people. Like, so these are the things that your DM should be talking to you about before you actually start playing. What sort of a character are you? What sort of content are you interested in playing in? Do you like political intrigue? Do you like murder mysteries? Do you like just hack and slash, cut your way through a dungeon, like hordes of endless zombies? All these things should be talked about, including, very importantly, what's the likelihood of death in this game? Do you care if your character dies and you have to roll a new character? Like, is that going to completely upset you? Like, should I be giving you what's known as plot armor, which is like, there's something that makes you, like in James Bond, he's absolutely completely encased in plot armor because he can fire off a single shot and shoot 3 bad guys, and then the other bad guys have got submachine guns and going and he's diving behind window panes that are somehow protecting him. So that's plot armor.
I was so worried about about dying that everyone's like, it's okay.
Your
There's
DM
this
can
thing that's magical and it makes you not die.
Exactly.
And I'm like, okay, awesome.
Yeah, so your DM can do that if you have told them in advance, like, I don't want to die in the first session. I'm not okay with dying right away. I've spent a lot of time on this character. I really want to see them through to at least level 3 or something before I, and that can change over time. I think the session 0 term is a little bit of a misnomer because it implies that you only talk once before the session begins and then never again. Like, it's really a check-in session. You should be doing those pretty routinely. Good job on the typo there, Wraith. Just wanted to point out that I saw it. So you should be doing those pretty routinely. You should be checking in with the DM like, you should be checking in like, hey, I just want to retract what I said at the beginning. Like, hey, I'm okay with dying now. I've played the game for 10 sessions or something. I'm okay that if you want to throw something more dangerous at us, I can handle it. These things can change over time, and vice versa. You can be like, hey, these fights that we've been having lately are particularly dangerous. I don't like feeling the stress and anxiety over every single fight being potentially life or death. It'd be nice to give us a couple of easy fights that are a bit more easy for me to steamroll. Good job on the strike there, Wraith. Twice in a row trying to strike because of the oh my god. I really should hire better mods, but it's had to get mods that can type when you're not paying them anything.
So on the note of death, I was also told that afterlife is a thing, or you can be resurrected.
It can be. So a good friend of mine just came around yesterday and gave me a nice gift. He says, as a thank you for DMing for us, and he gave me an art piece that he'd commissioned for his group. So this is one of the groups that I DM for. In a recent fight, this lizard folk and this dwarf both died in the fight. Oh. It was a big boss battle kind of thing. They went in a little bit half cocked. They had the element of surprise and kind of gave it up to try and parlay and screwed it up. There was a big fight. 2 of them died, but they went to the druids the next session. Big old group of druids that they happened to know, and they'd done a good favor for them, so they kind of were in their good books. And they said, "Can you do anything about this?" And they gave them their bodies. And the druid said, "Sure thing, we'll bring them back to life, but it'll cost you this and this and blah blah blah, other quests and things." Good ways to move the story on. And they said, "All right, we can do it, but there's a risk to it. There's a chance that they might come back as different than they are." And they cast a spell called Reincarnate, which brings them back to life but gives them a new body. And I roll randomly on a table of things, and the lizard folk came back as an elf, and he's now going through a lot of like interesting conundrums and like roleplay opportunities for him to be like, what am I? Who am I? I'm still the same person, same personality, but now I'm in the body of an elf. Like, what is this squishy pink skin about? And why do I not have big teeth anymore that can tear and maim people? And I don't have claws, and I don't have a tail. My balance is all off. And he's enjoying this like roleplay opportunity. The other person, they tried to do the same spell on him, and it failed. And so he just ended up in the afterlife. And so simultaneously, I, as the Dungeon Master, I'm going through the table and I'm going, all right, this is what's happening on the real world with you guys and trying to understand this guy who's just come back to life. And then this is what's happening in the afterlife. And I'm going through a whole like afterlife campaign with this guy simultaneously at the table. And I keep jumping between the 2 different scenes and using cool like transition moments and things to kind of cut between them as if it's a TV show. And then eventually they find someone with even stronger magic. They cast an even stronger spell called Resurrection, and they brought that guy back to life as well.
Okay, so I know there's some people that are going to be in the future campaign in your chat right now, and I don't want them to tell the DM that this sounds really cool, but this sounds really cool. And I kind of want to die
just to get this afterlife thing.
Go through this. This is
I will
cool.
I will say that there is resurrection magic in the game of various different level. So you're a ranger, right? So you won't have spell casting yet at first level.
Right.
But if you've looked forward as a ranger, you get it at level 2, and then you get more spells after that. But you're as a ranger, you're what's called a half caster. You're not a full spell caster. You only cast like half as powerfully as other casters of your level. And so you won't ever get very, very, very powerful spells. You'll just get kind of decent spells. And you make up for the fact by you're better with martial things and exploration and stuff like that. So at level 1, none of your party will have anything other than level 1 magic. At level 2, level 3, level 4, you still won't have access to any of the powerful magic powerful enough to raise somebody back from the dead. Which is why it's not a thing done that's like everybody and their dog is getting raised from the dead. It's meant to be a thing that's like a little bit hard to do. You have to go to a temple. You have to go find somebody who's powerful enough to do it.
That makes sense.
Even at level 5, there's the one spell that you can get that can raise somebody back from the dead only works if somebody is raised within the first minute of dying.
Oh, okay.
You have to be a level 7 character before you finally get to the level where you can raise somebody within 10 days of dying. And that's when, within the 10 days of dying, that's probably when you want to be going on your afterlife experiences. So it's really more of a mid to late game kind of thing that you're going to do. Of course, the DM can hand wave that. They can have an NPC that's powerful enough that's like, oh yeah, you know a guy who can cast Raise Dead. Let's start you all off dead and have an afterlife mission, and then the start of the campaign is you all getting resurrected after this short interlude of after. There's a whole bunch of different stories you can tell with it. It's one of the fun things of.
It has...
Level 7 gets. Wait, what did I say? Did I say level 7? I meant level 9 because it's a 5th level spell.
Or what?
Yep. Somebody's actually nerd correcting me in the chat.
Just turn on emote only mode. It'll be fine.
Thank you, Mendari. It is a level 5 spell, and I know that, but I think I just misspoke. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of different stories to tell, and it's one of the things I love about the game is that you can tell any story within the game. It's a role playing game, and you can tell a Midwestern sort of Wild West story. You can tell pirate stories. You can tell a space opera kind of sci-fi story with it. The sort of default is there's a lot. There's the default is kind of like high fantasy medieval drama kind of Lord of the Rings-esque sort of setting, but you can really do anything you want with the game.
Okay, cool. Nice.
So what was your next experience with the game? You started creating your character. You experienced early that people are very friendly in the community and welcoming and happy to help and explain things.
And then we did like a sample. You and this person find a goblin, and I was like, "Ooh, that's fun!" And then they were like, "All right, now you have to do this, find your proficiency, and do your attack thing, and then you have another word I can't remember." And I'm like, "What? Well, you did that, and now you have to roll it to find how much you actually attacked, because the first time you did it, you weren't strong enough to actually attack him." I'm just like, what is going on? So I guess a good question is, like, is the best way to figure that out just by doing or reading or
you'll doing and watching. So you will learn a lot by absorbing other people's content, and we kind of mentioned this briefly before the stream. Like, it's hard as full-time streamers to have the time to actually go and enjoy other people's streams and enjoy other like podcasts and actual plays and stuff. But if you can find time to do it, it would behoove you to do so. Like, there are a million different live plays, actual plays of D&D. Some of them have a lot of buy-in, meaning like it's a lot of like background and backstory. They've been going for years, and so there's hundreds and hundreds of hours of content that you could binge if you really get into them. Others are a little bit more loosey-goosey with the rules and stuff, and so you can jump in a little bit more. If I can plug myself, I run for a game called Viva la Dirt League on YouTube.
I mean, it is your stream. I think you can plug yourself.
I'm allowed, right? I'm allowing the guy who's running the stream to plug his own stuff. Viva la Dirt League is a comedy group, and as such, we focus on the comedy of D&D rather than like super gritty drama, kind of several hours a week. Ours are half-hour episodes every week, and they're comedy genre, so you don't need a lot of buy-in. You don't need to have watched the entire thing in order to understand what's going on in the next episode, sort of thing. There's always it always starts with the last time on, and there's a few clips of anything that's going to be pertinent for this episode, and then you can jump in. So Viva la Dirt League, there's also like the Adventure Zone, and there's Critical Role, and there's High Rollers, and there's Dimension 20, and I could go on and on and on a million times. There's also all of my friends here on Twitch that do related D&D content as well. If
Yeah,
you
I have
watch
lists
or
of
listen
them in a
to
Word document.
if you watch or listen to anyone who's doing actual plays, that is one way to learn the game, because you're going to watch them doing the table. You're not going to have the pressure of actually being at the table trying to think of what to do and trying to look at your character sheet about what you can do. So you can instead take a bit of a back seat and watch how people are performing. When the DM says roll an attack, you can watch what they do and you can pause it and take it back and be like, what was he rolling there? Why did he add something to it? Why did he not strike? And then you can reference the PHB and the player's handbook if you want, and like look up rules that way. Another way is to just like, don't worry about watching or consuming anybody, and just play. Just play how you're going to play and let the DM decide for you. Let the DM correct you on anything that you need to do. You could just turn up at the first day, not having looked at the rules at all, and be like, right, what do I do? And the DM would be like, all right, roll that dice and add your modifier on this sheet.
That's exactly what happened when we did it. He's like, nope, move the mouse to the right a little bit. Click that right there. I was like, okay, but where did those numbers come from? And then they're trying to explain it to me, and I'm like, but what's the 6 and the 2? But it's those numbers. Okay.
Yeah.
What do I do next? Just
it definitely
tell me what
does.
to do next.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out later.
There's two very different type of people that come new to the game. There's those who end up 3 years into it and still don't know how to make a modifier, because they're like, I just add what's on my sheet and the DM decides my sheet for me. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how the game works, but I have fun playing it and doing and rolling and telling what I'm told. And then there's other people who like me when I first got into it go, all right, I've got a +6 modifier to attack, but why? Why do I have a +6? Where does the +6 come from? Yeah.
Yep, that's me.
And that definitely helps you understand the game, and it's that sort of gem that you notice in yourself that ends up with you becoming a dungeon master eventually, because you are going to start learning how the game works and what is going on behind the scenes to make the modifiers that you're going to have. Yeah. And then you can
have to, or
yeah.
I just it doesn't make sense.
Cough, Rowan, cough. Yeah, I didn't say that. Riedel, you did.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's not. It's a neither thing. It's again. Okay. It's all down to how you play the game. There's no. One of the good things about the game is that there's no right and wrong ways of playing. You just, as long as everybody at the table's having fun. Well, there is definitely wrong ways of playing if you're being an asshole.
Hobo.
You can murder Hobo if that's how everybody wants to have fun and that's the game that you want to play. Then absolutely do it. But yeah, the only wrong way to play is by stepping on other people's fun or making it uncomfortable for other people. Hence the need for a session 0 to talk through people's boundaries and stuff. The DM should also be asking you in a session 0, like, has anybody got any phobias or anything I should stick away from? Like, if I have one day that you're in a cave and then suddenly you hear skittering of and you look up and there's 8 eyes and there's this giant spider comes down at you, and then you don't want to be doing that and like describing that moment only for in the moment to find out that one of your players in real life has crippling arachnophobia and
like hiding under the table.
Exactly. So those sorts of things should be brought out in a session 0 as well. That's the only wrong way to play, I guess.
And you said that there's a session 0 and that happens before
Usually.
the game even starts.
There's meant to be, yes.
You said that there's something else that you do, and that happens more often throughout, where it's more of like a checkup. What did you?
Well, yeah, that's I call them check-in. I call them just check-in sessions, and that's. Okay. I was just saying that like session 0 is kind of a misnomer. I don't think that it should be called session 0 because it implies for new people that it is a session that happens before the regular sessions, and then you never have to do it again. And I don't think that that's right, because people's phobias and people's consent can change over time. Consent is not a 100% thing. You give it once and you're fine with it for the rest of the game. Campaigns in D&D can stretch for years at a time, playing the same game with the same characters. And you're not the same person you were 2 years ago, and I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago. And our senses and sensibilities might have changed and will have changed. And so it's good to have check-ins from time to time, whether that's once a month or whether that's once every 2 sessions or something, whatever it is that's comfortable for you and your group. Your DM should be checking in or having like even if it's not a direct check-in, it should just be like it should be fostered an environment of safe space, essentially, where people know that they can approach the DM if they do have problems. The DM should be open to getting people coming to them and saying, hey, just wanted to let you know, in that last session, it kind of the stuff that you were touching on with the NPC's mother dying, it got a little bit too close to home for me, and could we steer away from that sort of stuff in future, like anything like that, just as a random example. It's important, really? I think, that that air of safety is in the game, because with it being a role-playing game, anything could happen.
it could get really sensitive, and then
It could
you're
be.
however long into the game, and all of a sudden you start really disliking the person you're sitting next to. That could be scary.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's, as
Oh, I never
Mendari
thought
says
about
there,
that.
it's the most important part of any role-playing game, because when you are
Wow.
role-playing, you could get into any situation, anything that you can imagine, anything you've ever seen in a movie, anything that can come up in a story of any kind could come up in the game of D&D, unless you've already talked to your players in your DM about like what is and is not okay at the table. I always do a hard line, soft line in my games. Whenever I'm starting with a new campaign, I'll approach the players with a I've got a form that I've created called a consent in gaming form, and it says like, which of these things are you okay with happening in any format? Are you okay with happening as long as it doesn't happen to your character? Are you okay with it happening as long as it happens kind of off screen, or it's only alluded to happening, or are you don't want it alluded to or hinted at happening in any way, kind of thing? And I'll have 1 to 4 on all of these different things. You know, gaslighting, alcohol consumption, spiders, gore, blood, guts, everything.
Clowns.
Everything you can imagine. Clowns, yeah. Everything's on this list of consent in gaming, anything that could be a trigger or a problem for anybody, and they say, I'm okay with you including this in any form if it furthers the story, and all the rest of it. And then I put those in a hard line, soft line thing, and I make sure that everybody knows at the table before we start, hey, there's not going to be any joking around about clowns because somebody said no.
So are you saying this in terms of you being the DM?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's something that the DM will provide?
Hopefully. I mean,
Generally?
this is not a thing that's like a rule in the game. It's just something that the community has said, this is the sort of thing that a good DM will do.
Okay. So maybe that's a good thing to talk about is, are there any red flags when it comes to someone who's new finding a DM? Is there anything to look out for?
100 things. Yeah. Oh yeah. I will say, if you have a bad experience the first time you play DM, and this is not just directed at you, but to everybody watching and listening, if you have a bad experience D&D, don't write off the game as bad because of it. There are a million different people playing the game, and so you're going to get some of everything. Some of every type of person plays this game, and there are some people who like to use it as a fantasy generator of like, I can tell a story however I want, so I'm going to have this tentacle monster do this thing to this NPC. And so those sorts of, like, the red flags that you would find in like everyday interactions with people, you're going to have the same red flags with DMs and players as well. You should never feel afraid to say, this is not the game for me, I'm not coming back for another session, or even, this is not the game for me, I'm going to stop right here and leave right now. Like, you don't feel like you're obligated to stay for an entire session if something about the session is creeping you out. Protect yourself, be safe.
Okay.
Don't, like, if you go onto Reddit, there's like a subreddit called horror stories, RPG horror stories, which is all about role-playing games where people have been through situations where they're like, you're halfway through the story reading it and you're like, why are you still at the table? Get up and leave. Go away. Stop. Why are you there? Stop giving this guy
the food and drink. What was I supposed to do?
It's like, oh no, like there's so many different areas where you can be like, and there's a sort of infamous expression among D&D that's bad D&D is worse than no D&D at all. It is better to not play at all than to play a bad game, because you don't want to be sitting at a table just feeling uncomfortable about like the weird sexualized nature of your character, the way that the other players are like attacking your character, or there's a billion different things that could happen if you're playing with nasty people. Thankfully, as you've found out, the community is very open and happy to accept you, and so you'll always find another table to play at. And that's why they call them horror stories, exactly. You'll always find another table to play at, you'll always find another DM. The sorts of things to look out for are just, is your DM seemingly caring about your character and what you want your character arc to be, your particular personal storyline. If you want your ranger to, the arc of their background is to find out what happened to their family, to get this amnesia dealt with, and to learn what was this event that seemed to have separated me and thrust me out into the wilderness. That's like an interesting character arc to go on and find out what happened to you. Where did you come from? Why do you have these skills? Why do you have a dragon's tooth in your purse? You don't remember getting that. Where did that come from? These are all things that... There you go. So these are all things that you can send you on. And if your DM is having no interest in exploring that, it's not exactly a red flag, but a pink one maybe. Like that's like a... Come on, you should really be paying attention to the stories that your players are wanting to tell.
Okay. So
that said, there's lots of good D&D. Oh yeah, more good D&D than bad.
There's multiple players in a game.
Yeah.
How is everyone's story kind of... I know this is probably depending on the DM, but is everyone's story kind of touched on every session, or is it one person per session? Or
depends. As I say, some players might not give a shit.
Getting that answer a lot. It depends.
Yep. That's unfortunately that is the when you're talking about subjectivity in D&D. There's a million people playing. They're going to play a million different ways.
Yeah.
I personally, as a dungeon master, will try to do that. Yes, I will try to touch on my players' stories. I will try and include them in the background. When I'm creating a story from scratch, I can't really do so until I've got my players, because once I've got my players and their characters, I get them to send me their backgrounds. What have you got? And someone like you, that is what I call an amnesiac story, and it is gold. It is gold for the dungeon master, because I can do anything I want with your background. Maybe you lost your mind because you weren't even an elf to begin with, and maybe you're a clone of somebody who was, up to that point you've got no memories before that because you were a clone. You were created in a lab. Or maybe you lost your memories because some sort of mind dragon spewed some sort of psychic poison over your town and completely lost. I can do anything with it. These are just things I'm coming up with right now off the top of my head. Maybe you lost your memories because an arcane wizard did some sort of spell in a laboratory 200 miles away, but it went wrong, and boom, everybody in the surroundings lost some of their...
Maybe I ate too many potatoes and really went into a food coma.
Yeah, maybe there was a massive food coma. Maybe you went into sort of like a fugue state, rage state, and killed a bunch of people who had killed your family, and then you actively blocked it out of your mind because you couldn't handle it. There's a million things I can do with your background. False hydras, yeah. I can do 100 things with your background, and I can start to drop seeds towards you. Like when you go to sleep for a long rest, I might turn to you and say, "All right, Tay, you're sleeping and it's going, you're having a decent sort of night, but you're tossing and turning a bit, and then at one point you have this dream. You swear you're standing at the end of a long, dark corridor, and at the far end you can tell that there's a person there, but you can't really see them. They're in shadow, but a voice comes out. Somehow it's familiar to you, and it says, 'Please don't forget me.
Oh God.
I need you.'
Do I
and
wake
then there's
up
this
running?
wind. There's this wind that comes down from them towards you down the corridor, and as it hits you, you wake up.
But I can wake up smelling who it was.
You can smell. You can smell a perfume, and
scent.
then I'd go, okay, roll a check, roll a perception check to see if you can perceive the smell before you wake up. And you roll, and it's a 6, and I go, you can't place what the smell was. That's just like a minor way that I have included you and your backstory into the game. And then given you a little hint of what was that person? Why did they say that they don't want to be? Why did I forget them? And then next session or next time you go to sleep, you'll be like, do I get a dream? And I'll be like, not today. Not today. And then you're like, okay, why did I not get a dream today? What was the moon? Was it a full moon when I got the dream? Maybe that's something to do with it. Maybe the moon's cycle, or maybe should I eat cheese before going to bed so that or maybe it's when I eat too many potatoes. All right, I'm going to gorge myself on potatoes before I go to sleep. All right, you have a dream. In this dream, you are in a field, and and then
wow.
and then
I want to play.
I've included
so bad.
exactly right. Yeah, man, you're such a DM. You can see this excitement for the game, and the excitement. You're gonna love this game.
Oh man,
So-
I'm excited.
So I will personally, as a dungeon master, try and include people's backstories, try and include something about everybody in the game, and not more than that, I will tie people's backstories together in a way that will reveal itself at the end of the game, sort of thing, like at the end of the whole campaign. People will start to learn, usually in my games, that they're a party for a reason. Because a question that comes up sometimes is, why us? Why should we deal with that problem? The king has summoned you to deal with the necromancer, and you're like, but why? Why me?
Oh.
Why do I care? What have I got to do with it? And so to avoid that question coming up in my games, I try to give you some sort of personal investment in the thing. The king summoned you because you killed the necromancer in the previous town over, and you were summoned specifically because no one else in town can shapeshift, and you're the only one. And then as they're sort of brought together for this quest, they all sort of learn, Recently, best example of this, in a campaign that I've been running for 6 years, and I've been setting this up for 6 years, one of the characters, and the other one, I can't show her mini because the mini smashed, unfortunately. They've been a party together for 6 years since day one, and they're level 12 now, and they just learned in the last session that they're cousins. They're first cousins. I've been setting that up and dropping small hints this entire thing, and I've been setting this up for 6 years. And then they finally learned it when they walked into. Hey, FBGX is in the chat. She's the one I'm talking about. She's the one that smashed. She walked into this temple, this fortress, that was the home of a warlord, an orc warlord, and she's a half orc. And she walked in and was like going to confront her biological father. And he greeted her and said like, "Oh, I've not seen you since the day that they kidnapped you from me, since the day that they took my Adian Jiha," and he used her mother's name. And she had heard her mother's name before. But she'd never heard her surname. And when he said that her mother's name with her surname, the other guy in the party, this fighter, whose last name is Jiha, went, "I'm sorry, what?" And he went, "Yeah, they took her mother from me, Adiana Jiha," and he was like, "That's my auntie's name. You killed my auntie," and he just drew his sword and then we ended the session in the middle of like a big fight with them, having just discovered that these two characters that have been together and fighting alongside each other for 6 years are first cousins. So it's that sort of thing that I will personally do with my characters. I will tie their backstory together in ways that they don't know. I say it depends because not every Dungeon Master has the time or the creativity or whatever to prepare their campaigns in such a way, and so they might just go like, yeah, you're on the quest because there's gold in it, and you've decided to take the quest because there's gold in it, and then you stay together because the game requires you to stay together.
So that's awful. So opposite of that thought, how does everybody just end up together?
Yeah.
How do you start a game?
There's a few. I mean, it depends. There's a few ways. Obviously, there's as many starts to a game as there's starts to a movie. Like, how does a movie start? Sometimes you start with a cold open. That is usually the term given to like when you start in the middle of some sort of action. I once started a campaign. I started a one-shot game, literally in the middle of a fight. As we're about to start the game, I told my players, take whatever your hit points are and half them. Take whatever your spell slots are, get rid of half of them. Like, you are in the middle of a fight and go. There's a beholder and it's shooting ice stalks at you. And what do? Go. And they're like, "Oh, shit." And they were like, "Oh, we fire. I attack him, blah, blah, blah." And then once the beholder died, I started like dropping in like narrative elements that explained where they are and explained why they got to this point with the beholder. And it's one of those sort of record scratch. You may be wondering why I got here 3 weeks earlier.
Yeah.
You could start a story like that. You could also start a story of like, you guys are just farmers one day and you're bored and you're like, "Hey, do you want to adventure? There's some money in it." And like, you could start a story however you want to start a story. But that's really down to the Dungeon Master.
Do you always have to start together?
No, I've started many a game where they're apart or like two groups of them are apart or whatever, and then eventually they come together and they have a reason to stay together from that point on for whatever reason. There's a lot of ways that you start a game. In Twitch Tales, the interactive game that I run on a weekend, I started it with a sort of a dream sequence. I like to use dreams in my game, as you may have picked up on already. I started it with a dream sequence, and Apis, the main character, was relaying a nightmare of the day that their town was attacked by a green dragon and killed, and they were one of the sole survivors of the town. And then they woke from the nightmare, and it was 3 years later, and boom, go. And they just had to, you've been a ranger for the last 3 years, you've sworn revenge on that dragon, but you're not powerful enough to deal with it, so that's like later in the campaign you'll deal with this dragon sort of thing. And they went off and did one-off. What did I say, fella? I don't know what you're talking about. Don't take any hints from from what I just said.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so what is playing through a random moment in a session?
Yeah.
What does it turn look like? What does somebody's turn look like?
Turns are only needed in combat.
Oh.
If you're out of combat, if you're around a campfire, you can just act it out like this. You can talk in character.
Campfire anytime you're not.
I'm using campfire as a general term for like sitting around having a short rest.
Is that common?
No, I'm just using it as a sort of a catch-all.
Okay.
Gotcha. If you are in a tavern and you're eating your meal or whatever, you don't have turns. You just do. That's one of the problems of D&D, is that it is very much roleplay heavy, and like, what is your character doing? How would you act? What do you think you would be doing? What is your character's wants and needs and goals? And then when combat starts, it suddenly turns into a turn-based strategy game, and it can feel very jarring. And there's a lot of like rules to try and negate that and try and like smooth that out a little bit. But a lot of people kind of just get to the point where they're like, hey, it's how it is. Just buy it. Just deal with the fact that combat is turn-based, even though it's all kind of not meant to be turn-based, and everything in a combat is theoretically meant to be happening simultaneously. So like an entire round of combat, one round of combat, everybody's individual turns are meant to be happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
In actuality, it can't work like that, because something that you do on your turn is going to affect the person's turn that comes after you. And likewise, if you've killed the person that they were going to go for, they're not just going to go for that person even though they're dead, even though they would if it was simultaneous. You know what I mean? So like, you have to kind of hand wave some of that and be like,
okay. That's good to know, because after finishing character creation, we did a little sample thing of you fighting a goblin. And it was very much that, like, this happens. And I was like, well, this morning I was in somebody's stream and they were in a bar, and then they found this out, and then this beer got knocked over. Where was all that stuff? So it's really, I was a little nervous that, like, maybe my DM isn't into the role play stuff, but it's good to know that it's some DMs, different things.
It's very different things. D&D, the creators of D&D, Wizards of the Coast, they keep touting this idea that there are three elements to D&D, three pillars of the game that they call it. There's combat, there's exploration, and there's social, I think they call the third one, where it's like interacting with people and NPCs and roleplay, and then exploration is like exploring the world, and combat is in actuality, in my experience of it, and a lot of people's experience of it, the combat pillar is the load-bearing pillar of those three. From its origins, it was a war game. It was specifically about war, and it was about battling, and it was about you would go and kill a bunch of you'd hear about a dungeon. There's a load of loot, and there's some goblins in that old abandoned temple. You'd go off to the temple, you'd kill the goblins, you'd grab the loot, you'd avoid the traps, and then you'd come back. You'd use the loot to upgrade your armor and your gear, and then you'd go out and do it again at another temple and another temple. Like, that was kind of the game, and it's evolved over time to have these other pillars, this exploration, these sort of roleplay, these social aspects to it. But it's still kind of this hybridized combat game, and so some DMs genuinely just prefer the combat elements, and some people kind of just hand wave it. I don't use a lot of combat in my games. There are sometimes entire sessions, like 2, 3, 4 hour sessions, where nobody fights anything, because it just doesn't come up.
Depends.
As a dungeon master, I don't tend to find it too interesting to just throw random monsters at you. The monsters that I throw at you are usually there for a reason. Like, they're there to try and flesh out the world a little bit, to give you information about the type of monster that's in this area, to give you like something that you can find on their person to loot, if that's important.
Okay.
I usually put a reason for the fight in my games, even if that reason is just to slow you down, like, because I need you to slow down for whatever reason. Sometimes I'll give you a fight for that.
How does that translate then into leveling up? Because I know there's two different ways of leveling. There's XP, and then the other one, I forgot what it's called.
Milestone.
Yeah. And you decide whichever one you have for your campaign. But how if you're not fighting, you're not in the dungeons, how do you level?
Hence why everybody uses milestone.
Okay.
XP comes about from killing things, and then they try to get around that by saying, like, oh, if you avoid an encounter, you still get the XP. Like if you manage to talk your way out of a fight with some bandits rather than killing them, you still get the XP as if you'd killed them. So that people are not rewarded only for slaughtering and like murder hobo. XP is they say like, oh, if you avoid a trap, gain some amount of XP, but there's still no way of gaining XP for doing some good roleplay with a shopkeeper or something. Like there's no XP there, so it's difficult to calculate. It's just cumbersome mathematics, and it doesn't reward certain levels of play, and it kind of incentivizes certain other combat play. And I didn't murder the hobo, the shopkeep. Can I have my XP? Yeah. So most games, the vast majority of games, will use leveling based on milestone, which is just when it's appropriate. When the DM and the party feel like we've done enough to level up here. Like we've been adventuring for a while now. It's usually when you've reached the end of like a story arc. If the king has said, look, I keep going back to the king, but you know, easy quest giver because nobody's going to turn down the king. But the king has said, look, there's an invading army that's coming from the north. They're coming on a big armada of ships, and if you go and deal with them for us, or you can get espionage and insight into them, whatever, blah blah blah. And then you go off on a big quest, and it takes several sessions, and you go and you sink the armada with some sneaky uses of magic, and you manage to assassinate the leader of the blah blah blah. You come back to the king, and you're like, problem solved. That's the sort of thing when it's like, that is a big milestone of the campaign. That's a big arc finished. That is one end of one particular like mission. You level up.
So everyone gets.
Everyone levels up. Yeah.
Okay. Is there ever? I mean, I feel like there could be times where not everyone in the party goes.
Sometimes.
Would that then mean
occasionally
that not everyone levels up together?
It depends on the depends on the dungeon master and how you want to use it. Okay. Usually it's everybody levels up just to keep things fair, to keep things from getting too complicated, and to keep hard feelings from being like, oh, but you know, I'm only a level 4 and you're a level 5, and why? It doesn't make for fun games. The primary focus of a D&D game is to have fun. Everybody has fun. Everybody has fun telling a story together. It is collaborative role-playing, collaborative storytelling. And that should be the focus of it. You are collectively telling a story as a party. You're all writing. It's an interesting and sort of unique medium. Unlike radio, unlike TV, unlike film, unlike books, unlike anything else, the writers are also the actors, are also the audience. Because unless you're doing it like I am for Viva la Dirt League, where we do actually have an audience, the vast majority of D&D games are the only people who will ever see that game. You're the only people who will ever hear about the stories that you're telling. You're not putting it out there to anyone. So you are the ones that you're creating this story for you to consume.
That's really cool.
And so as long as you're all having fun, and when it comes back to leveling, the way to do that is usually that everybody just gets the same levels, and you don't worry about, well, he had to take a week off because his daughter was sick, so he didn't play with us, so he wasn't there, so why should he level up? Nobody gives a shit about that sort of thing. You're just going to drive wedges between people where it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
Oh, I had to take a whole month off of playing the game because I was moving house, so I don't get to level up. You get to level up. Well done. Your character was there even if your player wasn't, or your character went off and did something else, and maybe your character wasn't with the rest of the party and who were killing the armada, but that means your character was doing something else. Your character wasn't twiddling his thumbs, surely. So your character was doing something else, and we can split the party if we need to for logistical reasons. And then when you do join up again, yes, you all leveled up, because while you were killing that armada of ships, this guy was off dealing with a zombie apocalypse that was happening on another continent. You can handwave things to keep things fair and leveled. That's how I would do it as a DM anyway.
Okay. So I don't know if this is it's a weird question, and I don't even know if I need the answer, but it makes sense to ask. What's the goal?
Yeah, there is none.
Okay.
There's no way to win the game.
That's what my brain thought, but man,
there's no way to win the game. There's no way to lose the game. The goal is to have fun playing.
Okay.
It is the epitome. It is the epitome of, it's not the destination, it's the journey.
Awesome. Okay.
Telling a good story.
That's how my brain works. Yeah. It's just like, what's the point?
Yep. What's the point? There's no point other than to have fun, which is why you don't need to optimize.
That's the best part about it.
You don't need to optimize your character. to be like the best at D&D, because if that's how you have fun, then absolutely do that. But if it's not, you don't need to do that. You're not doing any worse by not optimizing your character than anybody else who is.
That's fantastic. I don't really know anything else in the world that's like that.
It's pretty cool. It's a pretty fun experience. So I've decided to make it my living.
I have a question from somebody who was in my chat, and I thought it's pretty interesting. They said, what do you tell people D&D is if you want them to be interested in it?
Collaborative role-playing. Collaborative storytelling is usually the short answer that I give. If they are... So another analogy I'll use is, imagine you're reading one of those choose-your-own-ending books, where it's like...
They have those?
You don't know choose-your-own-ending books?
No?
Like books where you get to the bottom of the page and it's like, if you want to go inside, turn to page 17. If you want to go down the road, turn to page 112.
No, I didn't.
This is a new experience for you? Oh my god. I need to get you some choose-your-own-ending books. I've actually got one.
That's what they're called? Choose-your-own-ending?
Yeah, choose-your-own-ending books. Where is my... I've got one around here somewhere.
That's fantastic.
How did I put it? I've got a D&D related one. It's not on my shelf. It's not on my bookshelf for some reason. Where would I have put them? Oh well. It's not there either. I don't remember where I put it. There's choose-your-own-ending books. Okay, well maybe this analogy won't work for you then. Someone get us some R.L. Stein. Yeah, you never read Goosebumps as a kid?
I understand. Not really.
Well, anyway, there's a whole genre of book that is, well, not a genre, but a style of book that where you can choose your own ending. You get to the end of the page and it tells you do this or do this, and then you turn to that page and you continue. Choose your own adventure. Yeah. I often will use as an analogy. Imagine reading one of those books, but there are infinite options at the bottom of the page. And the only limitation is what you want to do. You're being chased by a zombie. All right, a choose your own ending book might say, if you want to try and fight, do this, and if you want to run, do this. And there's two options in the two different pages that you can turn to. Whereas in D&D, you're chased by a zombie. What do you want to do? Hit it with a stick. Take off your shoe and throw it at him. Try and negotiate. Turn into a rabbit. Like you could whatever you want. Like hit it with a fireball. Try and pull its pants down and trip it up. You can anything you want. There's literally infinite options. Teleport away.
Okay, I need this in my life.
This is how I used to sort of explain to people who didn't know what role-playing games were what this is. Like it's a story where you can play with whatever you want to do, and you can be like, oh, let's do this and let's do that and let's try that. One of the funnest moments as a dungeon master is to play with somebody who's new and get this moment that I'm getting from you a lot during this stream of like, you can do that? Like allowing them to do something and allow them to go like, oh my god, can I really just like can I try to negotiate with the zombie? You absolutely can. Roll a persuasion check.
They can understand me?
Whether they can understand you or not is down to the DM. They might understand you, but you can certainly try to negotiate with them if you want.
Wow,
if you roll well enough, maybe they'll take it.
I always liked sci-fi and fantasy stuff, but I never. Gosh, it's like one that will resonate with you more as a gamer. Then is instead of choose your own ending, just think about it as an open world sandbox game. You've heard of those terms because that's a video gamey thing. Open world sandbox game, but it's really open world. There are literally no boundaries, and you can go literally anywhere, as far as you want in any direction. There will always be more game generated in front of you. And if you've got a good enough dungeon master, they will always have plot hooks in those areas for you to deal with. And you will always have procedurally generated content in front of you that's like different and new and unique to you and your game. You're the only one playing that game. And the game is being created around you as you play it. I want to start playing. I want to play.
All right, let's play. Okay, so What are the questions you got about the character creation? What astounded you? What did you not understand about like the character sheet and how numbers were made and things? I'm happy to help out in explaining anything.
Proficiency was a big one that I didn't understand. That proficiency points are added to some things, but whenever you're choosing your other abilities, things that you're good at, proficiency isn't necessarily added to those, or maybe it is.
Let me explain. I'll start by explaining like where it came from and why, because this will kind of help understand. The big thing you need to know is the current edition of D&D is the 5th edition.
Okay.
It's called 5th edition anyway. It's actually like the 10th edition. There have been like mid-ground editions on the way where they've brought out something that wasn't quite a new edition. It was backwards compatible with earlier rule sets, but they changed enough of the rules that they kind of like made it a new edition. They called this one 5th edition, even though there's a bunch before it. And they're currently right now releasing the playtest material for the next edition of D&D, which again, they're not calling a new edition. They're saying it's backwards compatible, blah, blah, blah. It's basically a new edition. But right now we're in 5th edition, and the thing about 5th edition is it is simplified. Over all the other types of D&D, this one is the most accessible. It's the reason that more people are playing this edition than have ever played any other edition. More people are playing D&D now than have ever played it before, because it's so much more accessible. You can get into it and understand it. It is still quite involved. There's still a lot to it, but compared to earlier editions, it is a piece of cake. It's a cinch to get into it. And part of that is that in earlier editions, to be good at a thing, you'd have an entire sheet of all of your character skills, and you've seen those on your character sheet as you were creating them, like stealth and sleight of hand and acrobatics and athletics. It's overwhelming, right? And there's only 18 of them. In earlier editions, there were even more of those skills, like use rope and spot and hit and spot something that's hidden and climb and swim, and all of these other things were all different things. And things like climb and swim and push and pull and grapple have all been chucked into one skill now and called it athletics. So they've simplified in that sense. They've also simplified because in your earlier editions, you would choose individually out of all of those different, and we liked it that way, says Paddy Lally. Some of the people who played earlier editions are still very much proponents for earlier editions and how we should be playing those instead. So all of those early skills you would choose individually, like I'm good at this skill and I'm good at this skill and I'm good at that skill, and you'd get a +1 to this skill and you'd get a +2 to this skill, and you can put different ranks in this skill to get different modifiers, and each skill is sort of calculated individually, and it was confusing, and there was a lot of modifiers. There's lots of maths involved because like you roll this thing and then you have to add that, but because I'm prone I have to subtract 2, and because he's next to me with his magic aura I get a +3, but because it's against a zombie I get a -2, and you just have to do all this.
Just zoned you out at this point. This is a lot.
And that is the earlier games of D&D.
Yeah.
5th edition came along and they said 5th edition came along and they said, let's simplify everything, make it easier for people to do. If you are doing something that gives you an advantageous position to be in, you have what's known as advantage, and you roll 2 dice and take the higher number. And it's no maths involved, you just look at the numbers and go, I'll take the 17. And then you add your modifier, so there's a little bit of maths involved. But you have a single static modifier, and you just have advantage because you roll 2 dice, you take the higher number, because you're in an advantageous position. Maybe you are hidden, or maybe the person you're attacking is deafened, or maybe they're tied up so they can't move, or whatever it is. You don't need to now track all these different modifiers. Because of this I get this, and because of that I get this. It's all just like simplified into a single roll. Conversely, if you're doing something that gives you a disadvantaged position, like you are attacking from prone, like you're lying down and you're trying to hit somebody, you're not going to be at your best, are you? So a lot of this can just be like common sense. You look at the situation you're attacking in and you go, I'd probably have advantage or disadvantage in this position, and you ask the DM, do I have advantage for doing this because he doesn't see me? And the DM will be like, yeah, you have advantage, sure. And they'll allow you to roll twice to take the higher number, or if you have disadvantage, roll twice and take the lower number. And it's really simplified. How that pertains to proficiency is that you now have a single static number called the proficiency bonus.
Yeah.
It starts at a 2. It stays at a 2 at level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Every 4 levels, it goes up. So at level 5, it goes up to a +3. At level 9, it goes up to a +4. At level 13, it goes up to a +5. And at level 17, it goes up to a +6. So your proficiency bonus in D&D 5e is always a +2 to +6, anywhere in that range.
Okay. For everyone.
For everyone. Depends on what level you are.
Okay.
And it is a single bonus that you can add to things that you're good at, essentially. So when you start out your character, you get to choose 2 of those skills that we listed to choose to be good at. I'm good at sleight of hand because I grew up as a pickpocket, and I'm good at animal handling because I always had pets or whatever. And then, so you choose 2 of those from your background. You choose 2 more from your character race. Your character class. Sorry. Some races get one already built in. Basically, it will always tell you in the rules like whether or not you've got proficiency. You get to add your proficiency bonus to the attack or whatever. It'll all say you get to add your proficiency bonus. And then when you yeah, I'm a ranger, so I'm good at surviving off the land. So you are good at you take your proficiency bonus whenever you roll survival. And all that means is you. When you're rolling, let's take that example, you're a ranger, so you're good at surviving on the land. So if you are trying to find tracks, you're like, hey, you come up against an environment where there's you find a slaughtered person. It seems to be human, but he seems like one of his arms is missing, and there's blood everywhere, and you're in the middle of the forest. You're not sure what's done it. You might say, the DM will be like, what do you do? And you might go, is he definitely dead?
Check to see if he's alive.
Yeah, exactly, right? Okay, make a medicine check. And you look down at your sheet, you look at the medicine.
Okay.
You look at the medicine, and you see, oh, I've got a +3 wisdom. My wisdom modifier is pretty high because I'm a ranger and I've got good wisdom. I'm good at kind of like general survival, general awareness, I should say. So you've got a +3 to your wisdom. Well done. So you're not proficient in medicine though, so you don't have your proficiency bonus added to it. So you're just rolling a straight 3 medicine check. So you look down, you go +3. You roll your d20, and you get a 17. Oh, 17 +3, dirty 20.
Hey,
a lot of people call those dirty 20s or modified 20s to try and differentiate them from natural 20s, which usually have like additional things that they can do. So there's a difference between like whether you roll the 20 total or whether you roll the 20 on the dice.
Okay.
So I got a dirty 20, that's good. And he's like, oh, very good. You can definitely tell, even from a glance, that this guy is dead. He's not breathing, his skin is pale, there's too much blood around, he's been dead for. And because you rolled so high, I'll also tell you that you can tell that he's been dead for somewhere between 3 and 7 hours.
Oh.
You're like, okay, cool, I've got a lot of information there. Your next thing you might say is like, all right, actually I won't speak for you. What do you do now?
Well, the first thing I think is...
He's been dead for 3 to 7 hours. And he's missing some body parts.
I'm going to assume that whatever killed him probably isn't around anymore.
Okay. So what do you want to do?
But also, why did they only take 1 arm?
Why indeed?
So maybe it's not that big, you know. Do I want to stay around and try and figure it out? What's my connection to this person?
You didn't have any connection. You were out foraging and you found this thing. What do you want to do? Do you want to get away from it? Do you want to try and find it? Do you want to just leave it alone? And do you want to bury this guy? Do you want to loot him?
I think what I would do is try to look for blood to lead me to where whatever it was went.
See if you can find which direction it went. Perfect.
Like a blood
make
trail?
a survival check. So this is to do with your ability to track in the wilderness. So you're looking for a blood check, so make me a survival check. So now you look down at your sheet and you go, okay, survival is also a wisdom-based skill, like medicine was. So you've still got that +3 from your wisdom. But because you're a ranger, you took proficiency in survival. You put a little tick next to survival. So now you get to add your proficiency bonus to it, which, as we said, was a static +2. So boom, we've got now, instead of a +3 for the medicine, we've now got a +5 for survival. So we're actually better at survival than we were for medicine. So you roll, you get a, give me a d20, you get a 7. 7 + 5, 7's below average, but +5 takes it to above average. That's a 12. 12 is not too bad, and because there was a lot of blood, the DM has decided how difficult this thing is going to be to do. The DM is setting, when they ask you for a check or a saving throw or anything, when the DM asks you for a roll, they're setting the number in their head that you have to meet in order to succeed. Because there's a lot of blood around, the DM might have said you only need a 10 or more total to succeed on finding the blood trails. And so the DM is setting what's called a DC, a difficulty class, as to how difficult this thing is to achieve. So I set that as a 10. You rolled a 7, which would have failed, but because you're a ranger with a good wisdom and proficiency bonus, you took that above a 10 and you succeeded. I say, yeah, you find a blood trail pretty easily. It's leading away in a very direct path, and because you're so good at survival, you can tell that it's going in kind of a northeastward direction. You would be able to follow this path relatively easily if you wanted to do so. Now what do you do? And I put it back on you, and that's how proficiency bonus works on your skills.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So let's say then. Ranger might not be the greatest example for this because I think you're proficient in all weapons as a ranger. Fella, correct me if I'm wrong. I think rangers are proficient in all weapons, but let's say that you are in fact, actually, you're not proficient in improvised weapons, so let's still use ranger. You track this thing for a while.
Improvised weapon.
I'll get there. You track this thing and you find a monster with 3-headed, and I described the whole thing. We go through like an hour later into the session where you're like fighting the thing that tore that guy's arm off. One way or another, you've lost your sword, and your quiver is on the ground, and your arrows are missing or whatever, or you run out of arrows. And so you are looking around. I'm going to scrabble over to my sword, and I say, okay, you're going to scrabble over to your sword, but you're not going to be able to get there before the monster gets to you. Boom. What do you want to do? Do you want to try and kick it in the face? Oh, okay, I'll pick up a rock and I'll hit it. Boom. I'll hit him with a rock instead, just like you see in a horror movie or something. So you pick up a rock. A rock is not a thing, not a weapon that you are proficient in using. You've not trained in hitting things with rocks. You've trained in hitting things with swords and bows and arrows and stuff, but you've not trained in rocks. So this would be considered an improvised weapon. It's something that you are using in an improvised moment to hit something with or cause damage. Use as a weapon.
Okay.
Like you're in a bar and you smash a bottle. That's an improvised weapon. You hit somebody with a chair leg. That's an improvised weapon. You're not proficient in improvised weapons, so you're going to look down at your character sheet. You say, I'm going to hit it with a rock. I say, make an attack roll. Look down at your character sheet. Your attack roll, let's see. This is going to be a strength-based attack roll because it's really about how much strength you can put into this attack.
I have a question really quick.
Yes, go.
Is it an improvised weapon if... So, this is like life or death situation, and I'm out of arrows, but I break my bow to be a spear. Is that an improvised weapon?
Yes.
Even though it's still my bow.
So because you're not used to using it in this improvised way.
Okay.
There is some muddy ground there because the rules specifically state that if you use an improvised weapon that is similar enough to a regular weapon, so let's say you're in a blacksmith shop and you pick up a piece of sharpened metal that is like just like a shard of metal, and you use that, you might as well just use the stats for a dagger. It uses this. It does the same damage as a dagger. It does slashing. Blah blah blah. If your character is proficient in daggers, then maybe they're proficient in this particular unarmed improvised weapon or whatever. Like your DM can justify that, like, oh, if you break your bow open and you've got a shard of wood that's pointy, and you happen to be proficient in spears and javelins and all other pointy wood, then the DM might be like, oh yeah, you get to add your modifier to this because you know how to fight. Whereas, if you're picking up a dead goblin to hit somebody with them, that doesn't look like any existing type of weapon, and so the DM is going to be like, you don't get to add any proficiency here. You're not used to hitting things with goblins.
Yeah.
Side note: there is a feat that you can take. I won't get into feats right now, but there is something you can take that allows you to become proficient in improvised weapon, and the feat is called Tavern Brawler. It's specifically for people who are used to like taking bar fights and just like using whatever's at hand, and they become improvised at like hitting people with goblins. It's a very fun feat. But you, as a ranger, are not proficient in it, so it's going to be a strength-based attack. You are not proficient in it, so you don't get to add your... proficiency bonus. Well done. You do add instead. It's a strength-based attack, so what are you going to add? If it's a strength-based attack, you're going to add your strength.
Attack.
What is your character's strength modifier? How strong are they?
I would have to look at my sheet.
Make it up. We're in a hypothetical situation. How strong are they? They're very strong? Average strength?
I don't know what the highest number could
10,
be.
10 is average, 20 is godly.
Okay, 12.
12, cool. So you have a +1 strength. That's calculated because of your 12 in strength. So you have a 12 in strength, meaning you have a +1. So this attack to hit this monster with this rock is only going to be a +1. Because you have a +1 in strength and you don't add your proficiency bonus. Ah, crap. So you're going to whack. You're going to hit it with a rock. Let's see if you hit. Where's my d20's gone? You rolled a 2. 2 + 1 is a 3. A 3 is not enough to cause damage to this thing. That is calculated by the monster's AC or armor class. So that's already a stat that the DM has in his thing. 3 is not going to hit his armor class, so you hit him, but it's not enough to cause him damage. So this monster gets you and rags you around, and like the bear scene from The Revenant with Leo DiCaprio, he starts ragging you around in your back. You take, whatever you take, 13 points of damage. Take that off of your hit points, blah, blah, blah. You are now flown. He flings you across the other side of the cave, and luckily for you, you land down within reach of your sword. It is now your turn. What do you do? Okay, I've got my sword now. You
am
got
I
your
alive then?
yeah. You've got more than 13
I have
hit
my
points.
Sword.
What do? You got your sword.
Well, adrenaline's probably going, so I don't care if I'm hurt or not.
Yeah, man, you've got more hit points than that. You still got 20 points of hit points. You've taken some damage.
What do you mean I have 20 points of hit points?
Yeah, it means you're not dead yet. You're not dead till you get to 0.
Okay.
You were on 33. You just did 13 damage. You're down to 20 now.
I was on 33. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I didn't know you could go that high.
Oh, you can get up to 100. I once played a character that had nearly 500 hit points. Well, 250, but he had resistance to all damage, so it meant he doubled it.
How do your hit points grow?
As you level up.
By leveling?
Yeah.
Okay, because I think I have like.
You get new hit points every time you level.
Level 1.
Yeah, that's very good hit points, by the way, at level 1.
Oh, awesome! Heck yeah. Okay, so I'm. I still have a lot of attack left, but this thing just really.
It's looking wounded. It's like staggering. Yeah. You can see that many of its arms that it has been stitching to itself over time. It's got these multi-armed attacks that it can do and reach out and grab things because that's what it tore that guy's arm off for. You can see his fresh arm sticking out of his pec. Many of his arms have been torn off in the fight with you, and he looks like he's almost dead. So a couple more attacks might do it. What do you want to do?
Well, I think I'd sneak up behind him because he's got to be able to see me. I mean, he can use his hearing to, echolocation or whatever, but he's really got to be able to see me to know where I am. So find his blind spot, get up behind him, climb onto his back, and shove a sword through his brain.
Boom. All right, sounds good. So you roll a stealth check. Ooh, 19. 19 on the dice, plus your stealth modifier. What's your dexterity? You're a ranger, so probably pretty high, plus 3, let's say. And you're proficient in stealth, so you got a plus 3 from dexterity. You got your proficiency bonus because you're proficient in it. So you got a total of... You got a plus 3 from dexterity. You got your proficiency bonus.
5.
Plus the 19 that you rolled, so for a total of 24.
4, yeah.
And don't worry. Quick maths is difficult for a lot of people, and I was putting you on the spot in front of a bunch of people, but you get there. I literally have people at the game who have to use their fingers to add single-digit numbers. I rolled a 19 on the dice.
19.
I got
the 3 is from... The 2 is my proficiency, and then the 3 is because
Because you were doing a stealth check, and stealth is a dexterity-based skill. And so you've got 6 stats. I have
dexterity.
Yes. You've got 6 stats. Strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Those are your 6 primary things that define who you are as a character. And your strength was a +1, we decided, when you tried to hit him with the rock. Your dexterity, rangers are pretty dexterous, so you've got a +3 to that. We haven't talked about your constitution, but it must be pretty high because you've got 33 hit points. Your intelligence, we haven't talked about how book smarts you are, but wisdom... Also pretty high for rangers. You had a +3 for that, and then charisma. Maybe you're not very good at talking to people, so you've only got a -1 for that, something like that. So your dexterity was a +3, and your proficiency bonus was a +2, which is why you've got a +5 to your stealth. Boom, plus the 19, you got a 24. This thing is looking around and he's fighting your allies. He does not see you come up behind him with the 24 stealth, and then on your next turn, because you were hidden from him on this turn. He doesn't attack you on his turn, he attacks your friends instead. On your next turn, because you were hidden from him, boom, you're going to attack him. And, what did I say before? When you're in a situation that's good for you, what do you do with the dice? If the DM decides you're in an advantageous position, what might I give you? What might I do for you? I might allow you to roll with... I might allow you to roll with advantage. So you are in an advantageous position because you're hidden from him. So you get to attack with advantage. That means you roll twice and take the higher of the 2 numbers as your attack roll.
Oh, okay. So that's something that's new to me. I don't remember talking about that.
That's fine. It'll come up a lot. So boom, I'm going to roll 2 dice. I got a 3 on one of them, which is not good, and I got a 16 on the other, which is much better. So because I'm in an advantageous position, instead of rolling a 3, I'm going to take that 16, and then I'm going to make my attack.
Decides if you're in an advantageous position?
Yes. The DM decides whether you've got advantage or disadvantage.
Do you have to ask that, or do they tell you?
You can usually ask for it. You can be like, hey, do I get advantage in this position? And be a bit cheeky about it, and the DMs will often tell you yes or no. But some of the rules specify yes, you get advantage, because if you're hidden, that is one of the things that's written right there in the rule. If you are hidden at the start of your turn, you have advantage on the first attack.
Oh, okay, perfect.
But being that the DM is the overlord of everything, the DM can, even when it's written in the rules, the DM can decide, because of circumstances, I'm going to say that you don't have advantage in this position for whatever reason. And it's up to you to be like, you can try and argue your point and be like, are you sure, because I should blah blah blah, but ultimately it's your job as the player to accept whatever the DM says, as that's the rule. The DM has decided that this is the situation in this moment. Don't argue with it.
Okay.
You can argue with it after the game if you really feel like you were unfairly treated, but don't waste everybody's time by like slowing the game down to a stop to argue over minutiae of how the rules work. It's quite often that the DM will like adapt the rules to like the circumstances given on what we're playing.
So I had my one turn where I got stealthy, and then instead of just being able to attack right away, I had to wait for everybody else to go.
Yes,
but in
because
that span,
because you used your turn to go stealthy, to like sneak up behind him.
In that span, the monster may have moved.
Yeah.
Is that an issue for me?
You've got movement on your turn. Everybody has movement, an action, and a bonus action on your turn.
Am I still in stealth, though?
Yep, you're still stealthy unless you do something that stops that stealth, like making an attack roll. Or like giving yourself away, or like jumping out from behind them and waving your hands.
Somebody breaks a wall and all of a sudden I'm engulfed in light?
Then maybe you're no longer hidden, and the DM is up to them to decide. So it is,
like,
you were hidden on your turn. By the time it comes back round to your turn again, you are no longer hidden because the monster's moved and seen you.
Okay, gotcha.
Cool. So then you move up behind him. You roll a 16 on your attack to try and stab him in the back with your sword. You are, unlike the rock, you are proficient in swords. You know how to use them. Yeah. So what do you reckon you're going to roll? What would the attack roll modifier be?
The attack roll modifier.
Yeah. What am I adding? So I rolled a 16 on the dice. 16 is not enough to hit this creature's armor class, but it's close.
Oh.
If you add your attack roll modifier, it might get enough. What are you adding to the 16?
The attack roll modifier.
So you're always going to add one of the 6 stats. Strength, dexterity, constitution,
dexterity.
Blah, blah, blah.
It's
dexterity? It might be dexterity. Maybe you're using a rapier, like a dexterous kind of a weapon, or a dagger.
I'm using a short sword.
A short sword. There you go then. That can be a dexterity-based weapon. They're considered finesse weapons. Is that right for short swords, or is that just for monks?
I thought they were dexterity.
I think short swords default are strength-based. It's been a while since I looked that up. I can't remember. Let's say they are. Maybe you've got a feat that allows them to be dexterity. I think as default, short swords are only strength-based, unless you're a monk, in which case you can treat them as being dex-based. If they have the finesse tag on that particular weapon, then it means that you can use either strength or dexterity. Somebody in the chat will tell me in a second. So you're using a short sword that for whatever reason you can treat as dexterity. So you're using your +3 from dexterity, but unlike the rock, you're proficient in this. So what else do you add?
Yeah, +2.
Boom! You add your proficiency bonus, and that's how proficiency works. If it's something that on your character sheet it says you are proficient in it, you get to add your proficiency bonus. Mm-hmm. But let's say instead of being level 1, 2, 3, or 4, you're now level 5, and your proficiency bonus is a +3 now. What's your attack roll now?
Attack roll. I keep forgetting what that is.
With your short sword? It's a dexterous-based weapon.
The attack roll is whatever the class is, plus if you're proficient, that's what the attack roll is?
Not your class, whatever the ability score is, the respective ability score. Yeah.
So attack roll is ability plus if you're if you're proficient in it. That's what the attack roll is?
That is exactly right.
Okay, now I understand what attack roll is.
Boom. So, and that's for weapon attacks. If you're a spellcaster and you're using spellcasting attacks, then yours will be like wisdom, and then whatever the proficiency bonus is. It's whatever you're using to cast your spells, your wisdom, your intelligence, or your charisma, usually. So your attack roll is to do with whether or not you hit, and it is the relevant statistic. Dexterity mostly for you, because all of your ranged weapons are to do with like how well you're aiming, and so even though it takes a lot of strength to pull back a longbow, D&D kind of like hand waves that, and it's like...
Yeah, I thought that was funny, because I had that question too. I was like, you need to be really strong to use this weapon? Yeah,
it's not... They simplify that kind of to their detriment, in my opinion. I feel like they went a bit too simplified with a bunch of things, and I think that's one of the things that they should have done. I reckon it should have been a strength roll to attack and then dex roll for damage, but whatever. Sorry, other way around.
A quick question on that note is I created my character with specific shoes that have hooks on them on the front.
Cool.
So that if I lose an arm, I can still shoot my bow.
Oh, nice. Very clever.
that's still dexterity, right?
Yeah, it'll still be a dex. You're making an attack roll with a bow, so it'll still be a dexterity thing. Again, the DM can decide, yeah, you can do it, but you're going to do it with disadvantage because you're in tremendous pain and you're not really aiming well. And so you'd roll twice and get whatever. So you rolled a 16 on the dice, and then you got a +5 from your attack roll. That's a 21 to hit. Yeah. 21 will hit. Bam, you hit this monster's armor class.
Okay.
Now you need to roll damage. Because because you're using a short sword, the damage is a d6. Your good old cubic Monopoly die. And then plus usually it's plus your dexterity modifier. Whichever modifier you used for the attack roll, in this case it was dexterity, you would add that on for damage as well. So you'd do d6 plus 3. And you'd roll 5. 5 plus 3 is 8.
Oh.
The monster only had 6 hit points left, so it's going to die. You describe the kill. This is something that I like to do as a dungeon master. If a player gets a kill on a monster, I put it to you and I say, what does it look like when you take out this monster finally? He's grabbed one of your allies. He's grabbed the bard as he's singing his tune. Please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. I'm just a singer. And he's grabbed him by the arm and he's pulled him out. And you can hear crack crack as he's like putting him on the. And this monster is trying to pull this bard's arm off. What do? As you snuck up behind him, you managed to get this drop on him. He didn't see you coming. The short sword goes into his back. What happens?
Well, I've got both hands on the weapon over. I'm jumping onto his back and slamming the weapon straight into his back. I pull down with all of my might, and it cuts his entire body in half.
Like undoing a zip. You start to see this. You feel this hot liquid almost burning your hands as this torrent of blood is coming down your arms. You tear it open. You feel like the jutting, breaking sensation as you're cutting through sinew and bone. You hear this sort of unearthly scream as this creature drops to the ground, salty blood spraying in the face. And
knowing me, I would probably slip on the blood as I like step on the ground. And
I don't know, you're pretty dexterous.
And I smile.
You sit on your butt and smile. And the bard says, "Oh my arm! I'll never play again." Well done. You killed the monster, and as you loot the lair and go and avenge that guy who died in the forest, you level up, and bam, you're next level.
Do I get to carry the head out with me?
You carry the head out, yeah, and then suddenly we're back from combat into like roleplay element of the game, and we're no longer in round by round turn, and so now it's about like what do you do? It's straight back into what do you do? And you go, okay, I'm gonna loot the body. I'm gonna cut his head off. I'm gonna see if there's any hostages in here. I'm gonna heal the bard before he gets any more damage and whatever. Carry a severed head around. Why not? Exactly right.
I mean, yeah, why not?
So that's how proficiency works. That's a long-winded way of explaining how proficiency works, but hopefully a little bit more immersive and understandable.
Yeah, that was fantastic. The whole time I was just thinking through my character sheet, trying to remember what all of that was and like where it's placed, because I'm a vision person.
Yeah, same.
And it kind of was nice that I could remember where everything was placed, because then I had to actually think about what was going on.
What do you what else is there anything else that's come up? I should actually remember that I have been asking people to put questions of their own in the chat, and I've been neglecting them entirely. If there's any other questions you have, please do let me know, and otherwise I will pull up the questions that other people have been asking in the meantime. Any other questions?
Like definitions or common words like murder hobo that I need to know about?
Very good question.
Or should know about?
Yes, yeah. Let me think if I can think of some. Especially if you start reading like Reddit and stuff, you'll start to pick up on these things. There is an acronym that's used that is RAW, R-A-W, and it's usually all in capitals, and it stands for Rules as Written. And it usually comes up when anybody's arguing about a thing. There's rules as written, and then there's RAI, R-A-I. It stands for rules as intended. And in some of the things, of the book, you can tell that from the way that they've written it, you can tell that they meant it to be a certain way. Like you're meant to only be able to do this on your allies. You're only meant to be able to heal your allies, kind of thing. But rules as written, it doesn't say that. Rules as written, technically, you should be able to do this on anyone. Like, technically, you should be able to do this on yourself. You should be able to cast whatever it is on yourself. And then rules as intended, you can, and then that's where the arguments come in about like, I think that doesn't make sense to do it that way. Yeah, but rules as written says, and it's like, yeah, rules as written, rules as intended, and people will usually argue about RAW versus RAI. So that's one thing that took me a while to be like, what are they talking about raw? What's raw? Why is raw? There's rules lawyers. Rules lawyers, leading on nicely from what I just mentioned. Rules lawyer is a term for somebody who knows the rules really well and will try, like a lawyer, to fight for their point and like, technically speaking, that's a bonus action to cast, and technically speaking, you've already used your bonus action to switch your weapon out this turn, so technically you don't have a bonus action. And they all talk like this. This is an important part of being a rules lawyer. They scrunch their faces up and push their glasses up, and this is a rules lawyer. And technically speaking, so there's another one. A couple more acronyms. You'll see the PHB mentioned a lot. That's the Player's Handbook.
Player Handbook.
DMG is the Dungeon Master's Guide. Monster Manual, or will come up from time to time, but not as often. What else have we got, guys? People in the chat, give me some terms that come up. WotC. WotC, as Mendari says, WotC is WOTC, which stands for Wizards of the Coast. That's referring to our overlords and saviors, the people who create D&D, the publishers of D&D, Wizards of the Coast, who work for Hasbro. Stats, if they're talking about stats, then that's just a general term for statistics or your ability scores, strength, dex, con, all that, the stats of the character. Saving throws. Do you know what saving throws are?
No.
So you've got your stats, your strength, dex, constitution, blah blah blah, and then you've got your skills, which we've talked a lot about with your stealth and all the rest of it. Skills are things when you're trying to do them. You're attempting a thing. You're doing a skill check. A saving throw is for if something's happening to you against your will, kind of thing. So if somebody's trying to push you over, that might be a strength saving throw. Or if a fireball is engulfing your entire area and you're trying to dive out of the way of it, that might be a dexterity saving throw. If somebody is trying to enchant your mind and control you, that might be a wisdom saving throw. So saving throws are when things are happening to you.
So how does isn't everything happening all at the same time anyway?
It is, yes. On your turn, on somebody else, on the bad guy's turn, he casts a fireball at you. Boom! There's a big fireball. You get to make a dexterity saving throw to see if you can avoid half the damage. This is another reason why, like, you're in the middle of a 20-foot fireball and you can avoid half damage. How? What? So I avoid it by moving to the edge of the fireball? No, you just stay in the same spot as you're in. You don't get to move outside of your own turn, but somehow you take half damage. This is where this kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's because you're like, you're using you're dexterous enough to like whip your cloak around yourself to avoid the fire damage to your face, or maybe you're dexterous enough to pull up a big piece of wood right at the last second and boom. You're not actually acting on your turn with one of these saving throws, but it's a response to something that is happening to you, essentially, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So if somebody's talking about saves, it's one of those same stats, and you are proficient in it or not. What else we got, people? Reactions, legend reactions. Yeah, the only time that you can take a turn out of turn, if somebody makes an attack at you or something, you just take it. You don't roll to defend or anything. That's what your armor class is for. The only time that you can do something that's not on your turn, like you can interrupt somebody else's turn to take a movement or an action of some kind, is known as a reaction. And it's very specific as to when you can do them. It will state like, as a reaction you can do this, or doing so costs you your reaction. Sorry. So basically on your turn you have movement, action, bonus action, and reaction. And you only have one of each of those things. Unless something tells you otherwise. You only have one of each of those things.
What about the saving, what'd you call it?
The saving throw. A saving throw, which is when you roll a d20 and add your saving throw modifiers. Those can sometimes be reactions and most often not. Sometimes it'll say like, as a reaction you can attempt a saving throw to blah blah blah. But most often it'll say it's just like a free thing that you can do as a response to them trying to hit you. Because generally speaking, when somebody is trying to damage you in some way, it is either that they roll an attack and have to beat your armor class, or they target an area and you have to succeed on a save. So it's either an attack or a saving throw, usually.
Okay.
And likewise for your ranger spells, you'll see that some of them are attack rolls and some of them are area of effect. I feel like I'm going into too much minutia and it's getting too much. But it came up in the chat, so I thought I'd mention it. Don't worry about that stuff, it'll come up. Railroading, that's probably a term that you'll come across. Railroading is a term that you'll come across, which just means the Dungeon Master is putting you guys and your story on rails and kind of sending you in his direction. I've got a story in mind and I want you to do this thing. So you're basically on like rails. You don't get the opportunity to be like an open world. Oh, I want to go over here and explore that town that we heard about. And the Dungeon Master's like, no, because this thing's happening over here, so you go over there instead. It's considered to be a bad thing, but I don't think it actually is if you use it correctly. It's a big thing I'm not going to go into, but generally the distinction is between sandbox games and railroad games. Sandbox is like, here's a world, go and play in it, find your own fun. There's some stuff happening over here and some stuff happening over here, and you do what you want. Whereas a railroad campaign is like, I have an idea of what I want the story to be and what the progression of the story will be, and I'm going to kind of manipulate you, and whatever your decisions are, they're always going to end up back at my story. Like, I'm going to go over here. Okay, you go over there, and then you find yourself back over here. Like, that's considered railroading. And if it's done well, it can be if it's done well, it can be invisible. Like sometimes you don't know you've been railroaded if it's been done well. Matt says that a side scroller video game is a railroad because you've got one direction to go, and you like if in Super Mario you can go that way until you get to the end, and that's a railroad.
Okay.
Whereas like Super Mario 64 was more of an open world sandbox. You can go wherever you want and get whatever stars you want.
So how does the Dungeon Master make a story if it's not a railroad? Is that the right way to say it? With some
difficulty. By hiding the tracks beneath the sand, yeah. If it's not a railroad, so for instance in my game, in the weekly game that I do, Twitch Tales, where the chat are controlling the Hivemind creative, I've just created a world, and there's a little town. I started out, there's a town, and there's something happening in this town, and I have a couple of ideas of what might be happening just south of the town, or what might be happening just to the north. And then I decide, and that's not a railroad. Twitch Tales is not railroaded because I'm like, well, actually, with the exception of a very recent event that happened, that was kind of a railroad on my part. But it's mostly an open world game where you as the character go, we've heard a lot about a necromancer in the woods. Maybe we should go and deal with that. And if you choose to do so, I've got something planned for what is out there. And as you're going on that direction, we get to the end of the session and like, well done, you end of the session, we'll see you next week. And then I've got a week to decide what happens when they get there. And if they suddenly decide next week to be like, actually, let's go back to town, I have to be prepared for that. I have to know kind of what's going on in town, what's going on ahead of them. Let's give them a couple more plot hooks that they might hear about over here in case they decide to go this way as well. Once they talk to this guy, maybe they attack him, maybe they befriend him. Either way, I need to know what's going to happen with the campaign, so I'm kind of preparing a little bit more of everything. And then,
so how'd you know? How long did you know that those two people in your campaign were cousins?
How long were you planning that? Ever since day one, they gave me their backstories. I went, okay, this guy. Oh, his father left home to join the army. She was born to. Her mother died in childbirth because she was born to, let's say, an unpleasant situation with an orc. Okay, the orcs are the current things that the current army is fighting, so he would have joined the army to fight the orcs. And maybe his impetus to join the army was that his sister was killed by the orcs. He joined the army because his sister was taken and impregnated by the orcs, and then she died in childbirth because of it. And so then I'll tie this in here and I'll tie that in there, and this character gets this thing and tie that in there. And then from day one I've known that that's been the case, and then I've just been sitting back with an open, and their story is very much open world sandbox as well. I've been sitting back and waiting for them to eventually get around to the point where they go, I'm going to go confront my dad. I'm going to go up into the mountains and find that orc that birthed me, essentially. And I'm going to go confront him and tell him what a bastard he is. And then they finally did. And I was like, okay, it's only taken 12 levels. They're finally up in the mountains. They're finally dealing with the orc. He gets to finally reveal that they're related. And it paid off.
Wow.
And it was very satisfying.
God, I bet you were so happy when that happened.
So
like, finally get it out. Oh my god.
There are so many things like that. That's one of the things you will notice as a dungeon master. If you get into it, you will notice that you will be like, I've got all these stories and secrets that I need to talk to somebody about, and nobody can.
Ooh,
you'll end up banning your chat. Banning your players from being the chat. You'll be like, you're not allowed to come to my stream because I'm going to talk about our campaign.
Okay, so that's actually a good question, and I learned about this. So apparently, you can. So if everyone in your party is sitting together, but maybe dungeon master is having a talk with one of the players in a separate room.
Right.
Everybody at the table can still hear what the dungeon master has said, but your character doesn't know that.
Yes.
How do you deal with that if
This
you're
is
somebody
another-
that
This is another term.
is really bad at like
Separating
secrets?
knowledge.
I had somebody tell me to like make a list of like, this is what my character knows and this is what I know.
Yeah, could do. So this is a term, another term you should be familiar with. It's called metagaming. Metagaming is treating the game as if you aren't aware of the fact that it's a game, like your character using knowledge that they shouldn't have because of the nature of the fact that it's a game, and it's all about the separation of player knowledge and character knowledge. Some people are really good at that. I've got a background as an actor, and as an actor, it's like I know the end of the script, but I don't know, my character doesn't know what's about to happen at the end of this scene. So it's I've kind of trained myself to be good at not acting on information that my character doesn't have. But some people, as you say, you might not be so good at that, and it takes practice to get good at it. And sorry to say it again, but it depends. It depends on how much the table and your DM cares about that. Sometimes the DM's like, it's fine. Like, yeah, you wouldn't necessarily know that the guy's in trouble next door, but you can just do it. And other DMs are like, no, you can't act on that information because you weren't there. DMs that are super strict on not metagaming will usually themselves put in place methods to avoid metagaming. Like if they are having a conversation with someone who's like split the party and they've gone off to like in another room and they're telling them about what they're finding in the room. If DMs are really bothered about that metagaming, they will tell everybody else at the table to leave the room. All right, physically leave the room. Me and this guy are going to have a conversation about what they see. Or check your messenger. I've just sent you a message about what you see in the room. Or I've just written a note for you. Here you go. This is what you see in the room, so that nobody else knows. There's 100 ways around it, but it really comes down to like how important is it really. If the DM is open to talking at the table about things that your character wouldn't necessarily know, but you yourself don't want to act on that information, I mean, you can plug your ears and go la 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 if you want, or you can, as your chat suggested, you can write down, this is what my character knows. Like just like take an itemized list, just shorthand of like, I heard the conversation between so and so and so and so. I didn't hear this, and you can try and justify it. Another way of doing it is quite often, as somebody who's been playing the game for a long time, I know everything about the monsters of D&D. I know their stat blocks and stuff. So if I'm playing and I come across a grey ooze in the game, I know what a grey ooze is, and I know what the stats are, and I know how many hit points it has and stuff like that. And so I often will tell the DM, I'm not sure how to act in this situation because I don't know how much my character would know about grey oozes. Are they a common monster in the game? And in the world that my character is in, do I know about grey oozes? And the DM will say, oh yeah, they're everywhere. Everybody knows about grey oozes.
Oh wow.
And I'll be like, okay, cool. So I know how to deal with it.
So even if you're really experienced and you have all of that information memorized, your character still doesn't know it.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily know everything that my character
interesting.
knows about a situation either. It works both ways. So sometimes I will go, we'll come across a thing and the DM will be like, you come across an old dungeon. It seems like it may have once been a teleportation circle. In the center stands this statue of a man, and in his hand is a gemstone. On his chest is emblazoned a symbol. The symbol looks like this, and the DM will show you a symbol. Okay, cool. The first thing I'm going to ask as a player is, do I recognize this symbol? Because me as the player doesn't, but maybe my character does. Maybe this is a very famous symbol of some god that's in the world, and every man and his dog would recognize the symbol of Zeus. Would
that be an intelligence check then?
Maybe that's down to the dungeon master to decide. Because the first thing I say, would I recognize this symbol? The dungeon master then says, you might recognize this symbol. Make an intelligence check. Or the dungeon master says, no, you don't recognize the symbol. There is no chance. Even if you roll a 20 on the dice, there's no way you recognize the symbol because it's so niche and whatever, and it's part of a small cult that you never would have heard of.
Okay.
Or conversely, a dungeon master says, "Oh yes, you absolutely recognize the symbol. It's the symbol of the orc. The orc that killed your family was wearing this same symbol." And he's like, "Oh, cool, tie it in." It's always down to the dungeon master whether or not to call for a thing. So that's the other last piece of advice I'll leave you on, because I know we're going over time and it's late for you. It's not really your purview as a player to decide when to make a roll. You don't necessarily say,
"Yeah,
I'm going to make an intelligence check to see if I recognize this symbol." You say, "Do I recognize the symbol?" And it's down to the DM to decide whether or not there's a roll needed, because you only need to roll when there is a chance of success or failure, when the outcome is uncertain. If there is no chance of you succeeding or there is no chance of you failing, then the DM just narrates that happening and continues with the scene. If, however, there's a chance that you might, there's a chance that you might not, then they ask for a check, and depending on the outcome of your roll, you either do or do not recognize the symbol.
okay."
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so that's when I forgot what the initial question of that was, but like, yeah, that's when checks are called for or otherwise.
What was the initial question?
I'm just having fun chatting.
Yeah. When your character knows things.
Oh yes, meta knowledge. We were talking about meta knowledge.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely 100% okay always to ask the dungeon master about meta knowledge and to clear up meta knowledge and to be like, "Oh, I really kind of want to go and heal the guy, but I'm not sure if my character would even know that he was unconscious yet. Is there, like, would I have heard him scream when he was killed? When he was attacked by the thing in the next room? Would I have heard him? Because if I've heard him, then I would go and investigate and heal him. But if I haven't heard him, then I don't want to act out of character." And then you and the DM can be like, "You definitely would have heard him, you can go and heal him." Or the DM can be like, "Make a perception check, see if you heard him." Or the DM can be like, "Nah, he was in a muffled room, you definitely didn't hear him." And then the DM can help you with that meta knowledge of being like, "Okay, well, I'm sorry I didn't hear you. I can't just walk into the next room to heal you if I don't know you're injured." And you can work with the DM to know what the meta knowledge is.
So for someone like me who's new, who maybe wouldn't have thought of that, is it something where I say, well, I'm going to go in that room and check on that person? Is it something where the DM will say, "Well, you can't do that because you don't even know"? If
the DM, if they don't like metagaming, will probably call that out and be like, "You might not have even heard that he fell unconscious. I'm sorry."
Okay. Gotcha.
I certainly would. I would, and it depends on the group. Like I'm more lenient with my Viva La Dirt League group because it's a comedy thing. We're focused a little bit more on the comedy. I let things go a little bit more. They're all metagamers, fucking left and right. They treat it like it's a video game. Everybody's pretending like they know information that they shouldn't have, and occasionally I'll call it out, but most of the time I'll kind of let it go. Whereas with one of my home games, I'd be a little bit more lenient, a little bit more stringent, and say, "You wouldn't have heard that. You wouldn't know that information. You weren't there when they had that conversation. You don't know that she's evil." It's particularly insidious. It comes out real strongly when somebody makes an insight check. An insight is often used to see whether somebody's lying or not, to read somebody's body language.
Oh.
Insight is about how well you can read people and read emotions and things like that. If I describe a goblin comes running out of the woods going, "Ah!" If you roll an insight check high enough, you might be able to tell whether this goblin is coming at you to attack or whether he's running away from something. Those are two different ahs. And you don't know which one it is until maybe you roll an insight check. So that sort of thing is for insight.
Language tell you that?
Yeah, for sure. Like if you, I speak Goblin, what is he shouting? And then the DM's like, he's shouting, "Get away from me! Get away from me! Get away!" And you're like, "Oh crap, he's running away from something." So insight is used for those sorts of things. Too often it is used as a bit of a catch-all, like a lie detector. Like, "Oh, I'm going to roll an insight check, and I've got a +12 modifier. So I rolled an 18, and I got a 30 insight. I can tell everything about this guy." And
I feel like that's something I would do.
And it's like, you're not able to read his mind just because you're really good at reading micro expressions.
What did he have for dinner that night?
And so you don't know that he's lying. You just get the impression that he's got more to him than he's saying, and that might be all you learn from an insight check. So with insight checks, though, you go. The king says, "Blah blah blah. I need you to go and get this thing." Somebody in the party, one of the players, decides, "Can I just see if he's being completely truthful with us? Do I get any impression that he's lying?" I ask for an insight check. You get a 24. And so I say to the player, you do get the impression that when he talked about the reward for doing this task for him, you got the impression that he was completely on the level for everything else. But when he came to the reward and said he'll give you anything you want, he kind of stuttered a little bit. You get the impression that he wasn't fully on there. And then somebody else at the table will go, I'm going to draw my sword and say, you better give us... And I'll be like, whoa, slow the fuck down. You didn't notice that, barbarian. You have no way of... you don't know the first thing about... You don't know the first thing about reading things. You heard the king say he'll give you anything you want, and then your mind suddenly went to jelly, like swimming in a big bowl of jelly. Like, you have no reason to believe that he's lying. This guy with the high insight, he noticed that he might have been lying. That's usually the most common time that I will call out metagaming, is usually after an insight check.
Okay.
Is this making sense?
Yeah, really cool.
I want to ask the two questions that were asked by the chat. First was what were both your first characters? Well, we've heard your first character because you've made it this week, and if you want to see the process, you can go and check out Potaytosaurus's VODs as well, making an elf ranger. And my first character was an elf monk called Tukamil the monk. It was very fun.
I'm Karaus, which is basically three different types of potatoes all mixed together, and I added an apostrophe to make it elfish.
Make it elvish. Yeah, nice. From Luna Inverse, the question, Rob, I'm curious what your math interest was, but that's super off topic for the stream, I know. My math interest was more that I'm just good at it. I've always been good at maths. I've always had an affinity for numbers. It was just something that I'm good at more than I was interested in. At high school, we used to get graded on 2 different grades for everything. We would get an achievement grade, like what we were actually achieving in the class, and then an effort grade. The teacher more subjectively would go like, this guy seems to really be putting in a lot of effort, but he's doing crap.
That.
So my grades at high school were not great. Not for a lot of things anyway. So like I was not really paying attention. My parents would always say, as long as your effort grades are always high, we don't give a shit. Like, we don't care if you're achieving. So I would get A's. I would get A's for effort in a lot of things, and then get like C's for achievement. The only thing across the board that was the other way around, I would get like a C or a B for effort in maths, and always like an A+. I was just like naturally good at it, and so I would be like, I'm not putting in the effort, but I'm achieving fine. So that I've always just been decent at maths. When I decided that acting wasn't working out for me, I wasn't able to make a career doing it anymore. I went back to university. I decided to study academia again because I was good at science and maths. And then I decided along the time at university that I dropped off chemistry. I was like, I'm not interested in chemistry. Biology, I was like, maybe, but nah. Eventually I got down to physics and maths as the last 2, and then I went, maths. And I just stuck with the maths because I was good at it. And then I got a degree in maths just at the same time that I was starting my Twitch career and my professional Dungeon Master career, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll do this instead.
Wow.
Sup, Dag? Thank you for the raid. Dead as a gamer in the chat, everybody. I'm a university maths instructor, so that's kind of my world when people talk about when my ears perk up. Well, there you go then. What's your maths field, Luna? I have a degree. You can see it behind my head there. Next to my silver play button for YouTube. I try not to point that one out. I'm too humble. I'm a very humble person. I don't tend to point out the fact that our channel has 300,000 subscribers. I don't like to talk about that because I'm so humble and modest, everybody.
Wait, do you have a dinosaur head? You don't have a dinosaur head.
Don't have a dinosaur head. Oh, damn it. I do have some anatomically correct or zoologically correct dinosaur minis. A good dinosaur enthused nerd in my community, Ajo, handmade me a zoologically accurate Velociraptor mini that has feathers and everything like they properly should.
That's amazing.
It's pretty awesome, eh?
Wow, that's little.
Yeah. But yeah, in the background you can see my degree in applied mathematics.
I got a master's in the silver YouTube plaque.
Oh, was I accidentally pointing to the silver YouTube? The silver YouTube button.
I don't. For?
I run a channel called Viva la Dirt League D&D that's got 300,000 subscribers to it. Not quite 300,000. We're getting there. I don't like to talk about that though because I'm super modest. And that's definitely why I've got a command in my chat that's called. What is the command? It's called exclamation mark button is Robert showing off his silver bathroom tile again.
Oh my god.
Luna, what did you say? I missed it. I got a master's in mathematics, mainly focused on number theory, no educational mathematics. Oh, educational mathematics was what I was about to go into when I decided to divert into D&D. I was studying mathematics in education and working with a professor about that. Anyway, I think we're out of time by quite some time, and I really don't want to keep you up because it's late. And this has been an absolute pleasure to talk at you for 2 hours. Absolute genuine pleasure to help get somebody into the game and explain some things. There's a million other things to teach, I'm sure. You are absolutely welcome to come into any of my chats and ask me questions, even if it's in the middle of something else. I'll do my best to explain it to you. Best of luck with your career in dungeon mastering, which is definitely going to be the direction that you go from this point on. I can tell that you've immediately got the into your veins, and Dungeons and Dragons is all there is now. I'll chat to you again shortly, I'm sure, and we'll stay in touch, because I'd love to have you as a guest at one of my games one day. Maybe we do a stream or something.
Sounds fun.
Is there anything you want to promote or plug or anything while we're on?
I mean, I'm new into D&D, so the content that I have is different. But
hey, that's
Soul
fine.
Stuff,
People like video games.
I play Soul stuff. I'm working on my YouTube channel. Really, like anything at Potaytosaurus is me. I have some really cool merch too, but
what sort of merch you got?
Yeah. I got stickers and shirts and mugs and a little bit of everything.
A bit of everything. I just started expanding my merch as well. Who did you go with for merch stuff?
I have
that's good.
Stream Elements, and I'm switching from Stream Elements to Fourth Wall.
Oh yeah.
So I'm getting a bunch of their stuff,
nice.
Samples from them right now.
Nice, good on you. Yeah. They reached out to me recently, Fourth Wall as well, and were like, you should switch to us. And I was like, I mean, it's good, but it's like it was, for me, it was comparable to the stuff I already had with Stream Elements, and it was just a whole bunch extra work to switch over that I just did not have the time for. So I liked their presentation, and I liked a lot of the things that they were doing. But as I say, it just didn't seem to be worth doing the switch for me.
Yeah, doing everything a second time.
Yeah, doing everything a second time was the big thing that I was just like, I don't have the headspace for that. I just don't. I've got so much else going on. Well, find Tay everywhere at Potaytosaurus, and find me everywhere at Robert Hartley GM. If you are here from Potaytosaurus's community and you like what you've seen today, if you like D&D, if you're into it as well, if you've got any questions, I do D&D related content several days a week here on Twitch, and I have videos on YouTube as well. You can join in interactive games on a weekend. You can be here to watch behind the scenes content of the latest Viva Dirtly D&D episode. I also have Robert Reed's streams where I read some of these D&D books and talk about the rules, and that's a really good stream for asking me questions. They usually devolve into just ask me anything kind of streams, those ones. I've got a whole bunch of streams. You can check it all out on my schedule right there in the chat. Thank you very much. But for now, we will send you all off on a raid. I usually like to give my short rest guests the chance to raid, so who would you like to raid? Is there anyone online?
I would actually rather just go into someone that you suggest.
Read some D&D people?
Sure thing, man. Answer, but I don't
that's
know
all good with me.
People who are in D&D.
That is all
I'd
good.
love the opportunity to meet somebody new.
We've got Goodman Games, Rollstream, L2S Entertainment, Phoenix Iwaki, Maggie RPG. We've got Quincy's Tavern still online. Should we give him a second raid in as many days? I think he got a good
somebody
good
that'll
size
make
raid.
me laugh.
Somebody will make you laugh. Oh, laughing even.
I like
Phoenix is pretty funny. L2S Entertainment's got some good dad jokes. We haven't raided him in ages. Raid L2S underscore entertainment. Until next time, everybody, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Don't forget that this is what the two of us do for a living, so if you can afford to do so responsibly without leaving yourself destitute, we really do appreciate subs, bits, donations. All of those things really do help us to keep bringing you entertainment on this otherwise free platform. So I will see you guys at the next stream, and well, I hope to see all of these new names sticking around as well. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Wait. Stop. Before you go, let me know your favourite part of the episode in the comments below. Thank you.